Hey guys, it is day 15, day 16, Michelle Troconis. So I want to say hello. Ashley's first. I saw the stream on the front page of the Jefferson's theme song. Well, we're not in the deluxe apartment in the sky, but we are moving on up. But moving on up to the east side, to the deluxe apartment in the sky. Moving on up to the east side. We finally got a piece of the pie. Anyways, good stuff. Sheep hunters and the stream. Yeah. And the stream. Never. No. It must go. All right, guys. So we're going to watch Michelle Troconis. We're going to get if they come back with a verdict in the Ethan Crumley case because they're doing closing arguments, if they come back with a verdict at any point, we'll run out and take care of that. But for right now, we're just doing this. So we got day 15 in the afternoon. We're going to run through this here. Hopefully we're getting some good stuff. All downhill from here, yes. If it's 10 out of 10 already, you should 10 out of 10 would watch again, I guess. Today. Playback speed. Uh-oh. Closed captioning. That'd be funny if we could. The closed captioning would tell us what they're talking about. Wow, that one attorney's super short on the defense team. She's like, uh-oh. Oh, we're in a break for a minute. Oh, we're in a break for a while. Okay.
Counsel stipulate, please.
Yes, Judge. Yes.
All right, here we go. Back to the DNA lady.
Ms. Roy, where we had left off, we were talking about swabbings on lab item number 99, a door panel taken from the Toyota Tacoma. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, I do.
And specifically, we had gotten up to S1 through S5, which are depicted in the photograph, which is currently on the screen as lab 99 paren door panel. Did you do screening tests for blood on those particular swabbings?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results?
They all tested negative with the screening test for blood.
Did you continue to do, you did additional swabs on the store, did you not?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and I want to ask you specifically about S6, S7, S8, and S9. There are arrows on this photograph. Are those the general areas where you swabbed?
Yes.
Okay. And did you do presumptive or screening tests for those particular swabbings as well?
Yes.
And what were the results?
S6, I got a weak positive. The next one you're asking me about is S7.
Yes.
I got a positive with a screening test. And then the next one was S9.
And what were the results of S9?
Positive, weak positive.
And when you indicated you did a screening test, which particular test did you do?
I used the old toluidine one, which is the more sensitive test, but has a carcinogen in it. So I used it under the hood.
And directing your attention now to 99S11, which is also displayed in this photograph, was that a swabbing that you took of the door handle itself?
All right, guys, I'll be right back. I got to take care of.
Yes, after I removed it from
So.
the door panel, I swabbed.
I shall be back in 1
And
second.
did you do a screening test on that as well?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results?
One of the swabs tested positive and the other 3 I didn't test.
And I believe you indicated that this presumptive test, or this, I'm calling it a presumptive test, the screening test that you did can also react with certain cleaning agents. Is that correct?
Yes, but the way we do the test at work is that it's a 2-step test. So we add the first solution, which contains the colorless chemical, which if hemoglobin is present, the heme and hemoglobin, it'll turn colored. But if we add that to our sample and we get any kind of color change, then we would note that, and that would be a failed test. So one of the cleaning agents that might be present could cause that. So then we would go on, if we didn't see any kind of color change or anything, we would add our second solution, which is hydrogen peroxide. And then that would cause the whole reaction to occur. And then you look at what color develops. And in the case of Castlemeyer, it should be a bright pink, and it develops very quickly. And then with O-toluidine, it's like a teal, blue-green color, and that also develops very quickly. And we don't go beyond 10 seconds when we're reading the result for either of those tests. So the way we do the test, we know how it should react, and any difference from that, we note it, and it's either called a failed test or inconclusive.
And did you remove any trace material from the door?
Yes, I did.
And what type of trace material did you remove from the door?
One hair-like fiber and other trace material.
And was that designated as 99S14?
Yes, it was.
Now, when you remove trace material such as hair, did you personally test the hair yourself?
No, I didn't examine the hair.
Okay. Who did?
Anita Valones was the hair examiner on this case.
So essentially, you would have removed the item and retained it, and then eventually Ms. Valonis would have reviewed it?
She would have examined it, yes.
And directing your attention now to 99S15, what was that?
That was,
Sorry, it was a different photo. 99S15.
that was swabbing of the fabric panel, not along the edge, but that around the other area that wasn't swabbed.
And did you do a screening test for blood on that?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results?
Very weak positive.
And just before I forget, I want to go back to State Police Exhibit 154, Lab Submission 96. I don't think I showed you this photograph. This is Lab 96 3S1. This was the FedEx envelope that was part of Submission 96. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did you also swab this envelope for potential touch DNA?
Yes, I did.
What part of the envelope did you swab?
The flap area, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that's the adhesive side of the flap area. And then I swabbed a little bit into the envelope opening in the interior. So it would have been that flap area and then a little bit into the envelope interior.
And again, all of these swabbings were forwarded to DNA. Is that correct? Well, actually, strike that. Some of these swabbings were submitted to DNA. Is that correct?
Most of my swabbings were submitted to DNA, yes.
Your Honor, I'm just going to publish the stipulation here. This is State's Exhibit 103, Paragraph 1. State Police Exhibit 500A, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 30th, 2019, and identified as 1 White Hanes t-shirt, size 2XL, with blood-like staining, contained within State Police Exhibit 499, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Garden Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as Submission 49. So I'm just going to display the photograph in here, which is titled Lab 49, period SP 500A. And Your Honor, at this time, I'll just alert the court and the jury to a stipulation between the parties that upon further testing and investigation, this particular submission was unrelated to this case.
Thank you.
That's by agreement. That's so stipulated. Your Honor.
Thank you.
Reading again from State's Exhibit 103, specifically paragraph 2. State Police Exhibit 502A, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one clear plastic bag with a blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as Submission 50. Ms. Valonis, did you work or do any analysis on submission number 50?
Oh, yeah, I'm Christine Murray.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yes, I did examine number 50.
So I'm opening the folder entitled State Police Exhibit 502A, Lab Submission 50, and I'm going to display the photograph Lab 50, paren with paper added. Ms. Valonis, can you tell the jury?
It's
what
Ms.
we're
Roy,
looking at?
Mr. Roy, counsel.
Oh, my goodness, I'm sorry. I have Ms. Valonis on my mind. She's next. Ms. Roy, what are we looking at here?
So this is the submission number 50, which had a poncho-like appearance. It had what looked like a neck opening and 2 arm openings, and then the bottom was open. What it didn't have was a hood, so that's why I would call it poncho-like. So I put the paper in to kind of, the white paper to kind of show where the armholes are and the neck opening is, and then where the bottom of the bag is. So that's what's in this picture. And then it also has reddish brown staining that was at the bottom front. And I just tested a very small area with the chemical screening test for blood. It was positive. And then I forward this to latent prints.
And I'm just going to depict the photograph Lab 50 paren as received. Is this another photograph of the poncho as the laboratory received it?
Yes,
And I believe you designated this as side A, is that correct?
yes,
You mentioned that this particular object did not have a hood, so you described it as poncho-like.
yeah, poncho-like, because a poncho you would think of having a hood.
And I'm displaying now photograph Lab 50, period 1S1 and 50, 1S2, period SP 502A. You indicated that you took swabbings of this particular object, is that correct?
Correct. Now, these 2 pictures are post-latent print examination, which is why they're very blackish.
Latent prints used a dusting powder or something to that effect to try to develop prints, is that right?
Correct.
Did you do your swabbings before or after latent prints?
I did. I collected my samples after latent prints.
And I see here that there are 2 swabbings designated, is that right?
That's correct.
And what particular areas did you swab?
So this was down side B, which had that heavy reddish brown staining, where I did a single KM test before it went to latent prints. So that's that area of the poncho, or sorry, poncho-like bag.
And you used a Kastle-Meyer screening test on these 2 swabbings as well?
Yes, I did.
And the results were positive?
Yes.
Showing you a photo entitled Lab 50 S1 SP 502A CR. What are we looking at here?
That's the trace material that I collected from this poncho-like bag. And there were 4 hair-like fibers that I collected. And then there was quite a bit of reddish brown flakes and crust that came off the submission and other trace material, which I collected in a tin. And those were both retained at the laboratory.
Published States Exhibit 103. This is paragraph 3. State Police Exhibit 502B, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one clear plastic bag with blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 51. And I'm going to be opening the folder on States 109 entitled State Police Exhibit 502B, Lab Submission 51. Did you do an analysis of Lab Submission 51?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
It was a poncho, a clear plastic poncho.
So submission number 50 you described as poncho-like, 51 you're describing as a poncho. What were the difference between the two?
The 51 had a hood.
I'm going to display the photograph Lab 51 as received. Can you tell the jury what we're looking at here?
So the top picture is how it came out of the submission packaging. And then the bottom picture is how it was, I laid it out on the lab bench with the brown paper underneath. And in that picture on the bottom, you can see where the hood is folded down, and there's two openings on either side for the arm, and then an opening along the bottom. And you can also see a heavy stained area over on what would be the right side of when you're wearing the poncho.
And can you describe the heavy stained area for the jury?
It was blackish, brownish, reddish brown.
Showing you now the photograph in that folder entitled Lab 51 back with white paper added. Can you just explain to the jury why you added white paper here?
Just to show the structure of the poncho, how that area that was stuck together over on the right upper side where the right arm would have been coming out, and also just to show more detail of that area. So I'm taking pictures as I'm examining it. I'm not sure what it is. And then the one in the lower left, I did notice a hair-like fiber on the interior of the bag. So I went in and collected that single hair-like fiber because that I wanted to retain. And that's in the lower left photo.
And did this particular item also go to latent prints?
Yes, it did.
I'm going to show you Lab 51 post latent print, white paper added. Is this obviously after it went to latent prints and why it's a darker consistency?
Yes, that's why it's blackish.
Did you perform any screening tests on this particular item?
Yes, I did.
And how many screening tests did you perform?
How many individual times I tested stains? I tested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 areas.
Okay. I just want to show you a photograph entitled Lab 51, 1S3, and S4, and S5, and S6, and S8. This particular item was swabbed 8 separate times. Is that correct?
I took 8 samples from this poncho, but the first one I collected was trace. So there's actually 7 swabbings that I did from this poncho.
Understood. And so I want to direct your attention now to swabbing 51 1S3. That was of a reddish brown stain exterior as received. Is that correct?
Hey guys, I need to cover a couple super chats real quick. First of all, Unhung Hero for $2. Oh, I'm gonna come. Don't come. Don't come. And then Darcy for $19.99. Thank you, Darcy. Saying, did I send a Venmo to the correct Sean? Good afternoon. Yes, you did. And holy cow, I wish Venmo had told me you did it. Because yes, thank you so very much for what you sent over on Venmo. I really appreciate it. That's a monster super chat. Thank you for $100. Thank you so very much. Also, by the way, nice motorcycle. Pretty cool. Looks like you got a nice ride. But yes, Darcy, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. But yes, good afternoon to you too. So let's get back to the finding of no reasonable DNA evidence here.
Yes,
And did you do any screening tests on that?
yes. That was the area that I tested on my initial examination. And then I went back after latent prints and collected it.
And what were the results of the screening test?
It was positive.
And 51S4 was described by you as a reddish brown stain at the front lower opening. Is that correct?
Correct.
And did you do a screening test for blood on that particular swabbing?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results?
It was positive.
51-1S5 was described by you as a swabbing of a reddish-brown stained hood top area. Did you do a screening test on that particular swabbing?
Yes, I did. It
And what were the results?
was positive.
And 51-1S6 was a swabbing from the interior hood. That was just for touch DNA, is that correct?
Yes, in this case, I collected it for possible wear, biological material that might be left behind, and I did not test those swabs.
When you say you didn't test the swabs, they were forwarded to DNA, they just weren't tested for screening test for blood, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, 51-1S7 is not displayed in this particular photograph. I'm going to pull up a photograph entitled Lab 51-1S6 and 51-1S7. You described that as a reddish-brown staining interior front. Did you do a screening test on that?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results?
It was positive.
And just to jump back to the previous photo, which displays 51-1S8. That was an additional swabbing that you did of the exterior of the hood, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
I'm just going to zoom in on that. And this was for touch DNA, is that right?
That's correct.
So no screening test was done on that particular swabbing.
No, I didn't.
And I'm just displaying a photograph entitled 51-1S2Y. What are we looking at here?
I have to refer to my report.
Oh, that's fine. Maybe if I show you this. I'm showing you now
Oh, okay.
51-S2. It's a closer up photograph of that.
I just didn't recognize it.
Oh, no, that's quite all right.
Yes, that was a white hardish-like material with some reddish-brown staining on it.
And did you do any screening or confirmatory tests on this?
Yes, not initially when it was collected, but later on I was asked to. And Anita Valones had taken a swabbing of the white hardish material, and I did testing on that swabbing, and then it was positive with the screening test. And then I did the hemotrace test, which was positive, so that meant that human blood was indicated. And then I forwarded those swabs to DNA.
So in total, you did, in your analysis in this case, 3 confirmatory blood tests. Is that correct?
In all of my analysis for the whole case,
Confirmatory, yes.
yes,
And that would have been on the, just to be clear, the bra, the shirt, and this particular item. Is that correct?
yes, the swabbing of the reddish brown,
And all 3 came back positive for blood. Is that correct?
correct.
Just going to publish the stipulation, Your Honor, paragraph 7 from States 103. State Police 502H, State Police Exhibit 502H, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as 4 large white zip ties with blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 52. Did you do analysis on submission number 52?
Yes, I did.
What was submission number 52?
It was 4 white zip ties.
And were each of those zip ties given their own designation?
Yes, I designated them as 52-1, 52-2, 52-3, and 52-4.
And within the States Exhibit 109, specifically the folder marked State Police Exhibit 502H Lab Submission Number 52, I'm displaying a photograph Lab 52 1S1 through 52 4S1. Can you just explain to the jury what we're looking at here?
So this is after the LP examination, so they do look blackish. So it shows on the 52-1 and 52-2, as they were received, they were cut. So they're, when you use a zip tie, you make a loop when you use it, and then that loop appears to have been cut. Of course, it could have been some other mechanism, but it was cut separated. And then 52-3 and 52-4 were found not being in a loop conformation. So 52-1 and 52-4 had a lot of reddish brown staining on them, which would make collecting areas for touch difficult. So I tested 2 areas on 52-1 and 2 areas on 52-2 using the screening test for blood, and they were both positive. And then when I did that before it went to latent prints. And then when I got it back from latent prints on each of those items, I did a swabbing of the whole item. So I would have, on 52-1, it was designated 52-1S1, and that was the entire surface. And then 52-2, again, I tested 2 areas on the textured side, so not to interfere with anything on latent prints. And then after I got it back from latent prints, I swabbed the entire surface, and that was 52-2S1. Now, 52-3 and 52-4 had very little blood on them. So on the textured side of 52-3, I did see a reddish brown stain, and I tested it, and then I was positive with a screening test for blood, and then I collected it as 52-3S2. And there were other stains, but there were very little reddish brown. And after latent prints, I went and swabbed the whole entire surface, and that would have been 52-3S3. I also collected a fiber-like trace material, and that I designated 52-3S1, and I collected that before it went to latent prints. And now 32-4, there's very little reddish brown stain, and it was faint, so I didn't test those. When it came back from latent prints, I swabbed the entire surface, and that was designated as 52-4S1. And the little circles were tags that I put on each one of those zip ties just to keep the designation correct and initial them with my initials.
And you mentioned that you did do 1 screening test on 52-3, is that correct?
Yes, I collected that reddish brown stain. It was on the textured side, so I was okay to collect before it went to latent prints, and I collected it.
And were those swabbings submitted for DNA analysis?
Yes.
Going to publish a stipulation, states, reading from states 103, paragraph 8. State Police Exhibit 502I, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as 1 white standard textile towel with blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as Submission 53. You also worked on Submission 53, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Can you describe Submission 53 for the jury?
It's a white towel, bath type towel.
So I'm just going to project a photo entitled Lab 53S1. Well, actually, before I get there. This is Lab 53S1 and 53S2. Could you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at here?
That's the 2 sides of the towel. You can see the reddish brown stains and the light reddish brown
There's
stains.
2
and there's
sides
also
of the
some blacker
towel. Oh my
stains.
God.
And did you take swabbings of this towel, or did you actually
Game
cut a piece of
changer.
the towel, or both?
I took cuttings.
And can we see where you cut in this particular photograph?
Yes, on the upper picture,
I'll zoom.
oh,
in.
on the bottom.
On the top photograph, there's a designation S2 previously removed with an arrow. What does that denote?
That shows where I removed a cutting from the towel for 53S2.
And was that submitted for DNA analysis?
Yes, it was.
Was any screening test performed on that particular part of the towel?
Yes, it was.
And what were the results of the screening test?
It was positive.
And just to be clear, positive for blood, is that
Oh,
correct?
positive for the screening test for blood.
Correct. Now I'm going to zoom in on the bottom photograph here. And we see a designation on the left-hand side, S1 previously removed. Was that an area of the towel that you removed for additional testing?
Yes, it was.
And what type of testing did you do on that area of the towel?
I did the screening test for blood and it was positive, and then I cut out a sample and then sent a portion of that cutting to DNA.
And did you say the result of what the screening test was?
It was positive.
And this is just lab photograph 53S1. Is this a closer up view of 53S1, the cutting that you took from the towel?
Yes, it is.
And 53S2, is this the piece of the towel that you cut and designated as 53S2?
Yes.
And 53S3, what was that?
Can you click on it? Sure, thank you. That was one hair-like fiber and other trace material, including some blackish particles that I saw on the towel.
And was that retained for further analysis?
Yes, it was.
And I'm just going to zoom in here on the photograph. There's the acronym HLF. Does that stand?
You guys had a really quick question here about her. She's a retired analyst, but it sounds like they paid her to come back. So yes, normally expert witnesses get paid to testify. They get paid by the hour and they have an hourly rate. In her situation, she was a state employee, so I'm sure they paid her a little bit of money, but they weren't paying her like full expert testimony money, okay? So it's a little different in this situation. I know you guys were asking that question, so no, usually like those types of lab positions you're paid salary, but I'm sure they work something out with her because she's retired now. So I just wanted to clarify that for you guys.
For hair-like fiber?
Yes, it does.
If we look very carefully where the mouse is now over, is that the hair-like fiber?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
They paid her in cat food. One pallet of
Publishing
cat
paragraph
food
10
per
of
day of
State's
testimony.
103. State Police 502K, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as 4 pieces of black plastic garbage bag with black duct tape attached to 2 pieces contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, on Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, with subsequent
If she is an employee,
and designated as
that's part of her
submission
daily
88.
job, so that's not an extra thing.
Did you do
normally.
analysis of submission 88?
Yes, I did.
Now, submission 88 was actually given 3 separate designations, correct? 88.1, 88.2, and 88.3.
That's correct.
And 88.1, as I understand it, was actually 2 bags which were taped together. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm displaying a photo entitled Lab 88.1, which is in States 109, the folder indicating State Police Exhibit 502K, Lab Submission 88. Is this item 88-1?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Where would the tape have been in this particular photograph? Or where would it be located on the bags, I guess?
Where the 2 like grayish marker arrows are.
So you're indicating that the photograph displays 2 separate arrows, one pointing to the bottom of the photo and one pointing up. And the tape would have been somewhere in that area?
Yes, there was multiple pieces of tape in that area, whereas the aerial pointing down was 1 piece of tape.
And did you do swabbings of this particular exhibit?
Yes, I did.
I swabbed out Fotis' butthole.
Displaying a photograph entitled Lab 88.1S1. Is this the first swabbing that you took?
Yes, I took a swabbing of the exterior of a single piece of tape. I'm sorry, the non-adhesive side.
Would that have been before the prints removed it, obviously?
Yes,
And did you do any presumptive tests on that, or just for touch DNA?
I just collected it for touch and I didn't do any screening test for it.
And then Lab 88.1S2, what are we seeing here?
That was where there was a tangle of black tape, and I swabbed the non-adhesive side of the areas that were exposed in that tape, that tangle of tape.
And again, for touch DNA.
Yes.
And then lab 88 1S3, what area was swabbed here?
That was a reddish brown stain on the, there was, one of the bags was damaged and the other bag was not damaged. So that's how I designated the two bags, the damaged bag and the non-damaged bag. So 88-1S3 was a reddish brown stain on the exterior of the non-damaged bag adjacent to the black tape.
And did you do any screening tests for blood on that particular swabbing?
Yes, I did.
And what were the results?
It was positive for the screening test.
Showing you photograph lab 88 period 1S4. What was that a swabbing of?
That was the damaged bag, the interior lower corner, both sides. Now I will back up and tell you that the damaged bag is received inside out. And that's assuming that the manufacturer's printed information is printed on the exterior. And the non-damaged bag was received outside out. Again, that's assuming that the manufacturer's information got printed on the exterior of the bag.
And was 88 1S4 a swabbing of a reddish brown area?
Yes,
And did you do any screening tests for blood?
yes.
And what were the results?
It was positive for the screening test for blood.
88 1S6, that was a swabbing from the exterior opening of the non-damaged plastic bag, is that correct?
Yes, this was collected post latent print examination.
And on this particular photograph, lab 88 period 1S6, the top photograph, actually the bottom as well, have sort of a grayish circular marker. Is that the area that was swabbed for 88 1S6?
Yes, it was. So the pictures are the two sides of the bag.
And then 88 1S7, that was a swabbing from the exterior opening of the damaged bag. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you also swabbed that for DNA?
Yes, both sides of the bag.
No screening test done on 88 1S6 or 1S7, is that correct?
That's correct.
And is that because there was no reddish blood substance that was being swabbed in that particular area?
No, it was because I was collecting them for touch.
And then, did you locate anything within, or, excuse me, Mr. Parisi had located something within 88-1, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so I'm gonna pull up a photograph entitled Lab 88.1. 2. Can you tell the jury what we're looking at here?
One folded lengthwise black plastic garbage bag.
And this was designated as having come from inside 88-1, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you take any swabbings of this?
There was a stain, brownish stain, and I tested that with a screening test for blood. It was positive, and then I collected it as 88-1-2S1.
And I'm displaying Lab 88.1.2S1. Is that what we're looking at here?
Yes, I think if you go to the top picture, you can see the circle is around that stain. Yes.
And you also did analysis of designation 88-2, is that correct?
That's correct.
What was 88-2?
It was one black plastic garbage bag.
And were swabbings taken of 88-2?
Yes, there were.
So within that exhibit, Your Honor, I'm calling up folder State Police Exhibit 502K, Lab Submission 88, folder 88-2. Can you tell the jury what we're looking at here?
So both of those pictures are the exterior of the garbage bag, and they're the same side of the garbage bag because there's quite a bit of testing and drawing, so I have two pictures, two photos.
And I want to direct your attention now to the swabbings that you took, specifically 88-2S1. That was a swabbing of a latent print partially outlined exterior. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's because Mr. Parisi had actually done some analysis of this for fingerprints, correct? Already?
Yes,
And so you tried to swab the fingerprint to see if you could get some type of DNA or blood?
Yes.
And did you do a screening test for blood on the fingerprint?
Yes, I did.
And it came back negative, is that right?
That's correct.
88-2S2, which is the second swab that you took, that was of a reddish-brown stain on the exterior of the bag, correct?
Yes.
All right, I'm just going to try to zoom in. Did you do a screening test of S2 here?
Yes, I did.
And the results were positive, is that right?
That's correct.
And S3, which is seen in the upper left corner of the lower photograph, you did a swabbing in that area and did a screening test for blood as well, correct?
Yes, I did.
And the results were positive?
Yes.
And then S4 is, I guess, in the top third of the bag in the center where my mouse is. That was of a brownish stain on the exterior, correct?
Yes.
And did you do a screening test of that?
Yes, it was positive.
Incidentally, it's difficult to see in the photographs the reddish-brown stains. Were you visually inspecting these for stains?
Yes. And I was aided by what we call a crime light. It's basically a flashlight, a laboratory flashlight that has white light.
88-2S5, was that of a reddish-brown stain from the bag's exterior?
Yes,
And did you do a screening test for blood for that?
yes,
What were the results?
it was positive.
And that particular area is displayed in photograph lab 88-2S5 and 2S6 in the upper right photograph. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now I want to direct your attention to the lower photograph in this particular image, 88-2S6. That was a swabbing from the opening exterior right here for touch DNA. Is that right?
That's correct.
So no screening test done on that.
Correct.
And then 88-2S7 was a swabbing that you took of the reddish brown stain on the interior of the bag. Is that correct?
Yes,
And did you do any screening tests on that?
yes,
And what were the results?
positive.
And then 88-2S8.
Excuse me, Your Honor, can we at least have clarification? Positive for what?
Oh, positive for the screening test for blood.
Thank you.
88-2S8 was the eighth swab that you took of this particular item, and this was of a reddish brown stain on the interior of the bag. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm just going to zoom in to the top photograph here. There's a gray circular area here. Is this the area that you swabbed?
Yes,
And did you do a screening test for blood on this particular swabbing as well?
yes,
And what were the results?
it was positive for the screening test of blood.
And you also worked on submission designation 88-3, is that correct? Was that, no, that was Ms. Dulos.
Yes, Anita Valonis examined the knotted plastic bag.
Publishing States Exhibit 103, paragraph 11. State Police Exhibit 502S, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one metal scraper with a broken blade, contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, and subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 40. And I'm going to open the folder entitled State Police Exhibit 502S, Lab Submission 40.
Council, it's now 3:20. We will take our afternoon recess until, call it 3:35.
So yes, I know another snoozer, guys, but we're getting through it. Hey, bye, Franz. Unused black condom bag. That's a big old condom. Holy cow. You guys are talking about Whoppers and crap. That's making me.
All
hungry.
right.
No.
This Honorable Superior Court now stands in recess until 3:35. May I
The council
Alright.
approach, please.
Yeah, no, that's a common thing with police. They seize money and they act like it's it's so hard for us to spend the money. It's not a yes, big condom. The big condom industry is involved. They killed Jennifer Dulos. Let's just oh my god, let's get to it. I want some DNA. I want some of Michelle's DNA. I want Michelle Troconis DNA everywhere.
Yes, Judge. Yes.
All over the courtroom. Yes.
Your Honor.
The biggest condoms.
I introduced this. You're right. Yeah, I did.
Counsel stipulate.
Yes, Judge. Yeah. Ms. Roy, where we left off, we were talking about State Police Exhibit 502S, which was submitted to the lab and designated as submission number 40, a metal scraper. Do you recall? That's where we left off.
Yes, I do.
And I'm just going to display a photograph, lab 40S1 and 40S2 for the jury. Just directing your attention specifically to the top photograph. Can you just let the jury know what we're looking at here?
That's one side of the glass scraper, and it shows one area that I tested. There was like an orangish, reddish, I think I described it as orange, reddish, rust-like stain, and it was KM negative. And then I did not see any blood-like stains. And so I did 2 swabbings of this tool. The first one was the blade holder area and the partial blade, which was 40S1. I swabbed that for touch, and then both sides. And then the second swabbing I did was 40S2, and that was what I called the tool part, where your hand would go, and both sides. And that was, again, designated as 40S2, and that was also for touch.
And again, those swabbings were submitted to DNA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then I did just want to go back briefly to one folder, specifically State Police Exhibit 502K, Lab Submission 88, and the folder entitled 88.3. You did not examine 88.3, which was a black plastic bag, but you did examine some contents that were found inside of it. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm just going to begin by showing you a photo entitled Lab 88.3.1S1. Can you just let the jury know what we're looking at here?
So that is one piece of cardboard located inside bag.
And did you do any analysis of this?
I didn't see any blood-like stains, so I just swabbed it for touch, both sides, and I designated that swabbing as S1. And the photo, that's the white paper with a little bit of darkish flecks, that was found on the examination paper after I swabbed the cardboard, and then I just packaged that up and put it back into the item envelope packaging that 88-3-1 was in.
And then photograph 88.3.2S1.
Again, that's a piece of paper that was located on the outside of 88-3, and that there was no blood-like stains, and I swabbed both sides for touch, and that was designated 88-3-2S1.
And both of those particular items, 88.3.1 and 88.3.2, were found by Mr. Parisi and latent prints. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And just to confirm, your function in forensic biology is to look for possible biological evidence and potentially forward that evidence to DNA, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't do any DNA analysis in this case yourself, is that correct?
No, I did not.
I have nothing additional, Judge.
Your Honor, I'm offering Defense Exhibit R, which are some of the laboratory notes and documents from this witness as a full exhibit, and there's no objection.
I have no objection.
Defense are admitted as well.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I prefer using this surface rather than this podium, so excuse me for a minute. So I understand you're going to enjoy your retirement after this.
Yes.
Let me ask you some general questions first. You were at the forensic laboratory in Meriden for how long?
For about 21 years.
Did you work entirely in the biology section of the lab that entire time?
I did casework in the forensic biology section the entire time, but at different times, my focus of most of my work was in DNA. So about 50-50 split of my time when I was first hired, and then it was mostly DNA. And then at some point before 2015, I was asked to help out with the backlog in forensic biology, and then I requested to remain in forensic biology.
Well, I'm not going to ask you, you didn't do any of the DNA work in this case, correct?
That's correct.
But you, as having worked in the DNA lab for so long, knew what was important to try to obtain samples so that when it went to DNA, they could do whatever they had to do to make enough of a sample for them to extract a DNA profile, correct?
Correct. I'm not competent in the current DNA testing that they do. So after 2015, there was some training that I would have had to go through with some new methods. And I decided at that point that I was just going to stay in forensic biology.
Well, trust me, I'm not going to quiz you on any of that. So I'm going to ask more basic questions. So when things do go to DNA, they have different testing for different items, correct?
I'm not, they have different extraction methods, yes.
So you had mentioned earlier, there were some hairs that were extracted from some of the items that you examined, correct?
There was hair-like fibers collected from some of the submissions I examined, yes.
I thought there was also a picture of a human-like hair that you were shown an image of, were you not?
That's not me.
Oh, that was it was in the picture. So was that your
It said,
colleague?
it said hair-like fiber. I don't know if it's a human hair. I don't even know if it's a hair at that point.
Okay, so you have to physically observe everything that you're looking at, right?
Yes.
Do you use any kind of enhancement such as magnifying glasses or microscopes or anything like that in your line of work?
Yes, if I'm doing a hair assessment, then I use a microscope. But if I'm just collecting trace, I don't.
Okay. So when you become involved in any case, the items are sent to you to be examined, correct?
Yes, that's my role in forensic biology.
But this isn't like a controlled experiment where you don't know anything about the case, am I right?
That's correct.
You actually meet with the with detectives and police and maybe prosecutors, don't you?
Sometimes along the way, probably not initially. I might have a phone call conversation, but we do get information that comes along when evidence is submitted.
In any event, this is evidence, or rather facts or investigation facts that aren't necessary for you to do your work, correct?
Well, I think if I'm going to examine something for sexual assault, I should know that, because then my focus will also be to look at if there's blood, but I'm not so necessarily going to be testing a blood stain or sending it for DNA testing if it's in the underwear. I'm more interested in if I find a semen stain. So I do need some information to go forward in how I'm going to go about examining the evidence.
Fair enough. Do you need to know where an item has been recovered for you to do your work?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to turn to Exhibit R, and I'm going to ask if we could turn on the screen and look at, for my purposes, I have some of your, before we do that, let me just say, you prepared extensive notes from the laboratory on this case, correct?
Yes.
More than 100 pages easily, right?
Yes.
And in fact, just in front of you, just for your own edification, you have two large 3-ring notebooks, just so that if you had to refer to your notes, you have that there in front of you so you could refresh your recollection, right?
Yes. I mean, they're in plastic sleeve protectors, which adds some volume. But yes, I looked at a lot of submissions in this case.
My point being, you can't remember from one case to another, especially years later, exactly what you did just based on a number or a letter or an item that's been identified, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I take it after this case, you had many other cases that you had to work on. Is that
Yes,
fair?
this was in 2019. I didn't retire until the end of 2022. So I had, another 2.5 years of, 3.5 years of casework to do.
Now, keep on, that was during the COVID pandemic, and I guess the work dropped down a little during that time. Am I correct or no?
The COVID pandemic didn't really affect us until 2020.
Okay. Okay,
yes.
fair enough.
I think the same time it affected other people, that March date, the lab didn't close, but that's when, society changed quite a bit.
You're already in your job wearing protective gear, so I assume that came to you as second nature to have to do that during the pandemic, right?
Cleaning, yes.
Okay, so if I could ask that, you could call up on exhibit R number 64, please. Could you zoom out a bit on that, please, so I have the whole document? So this is a page from your notes, correct?
That's correct.
If we look up in the upper right-hand corner, those are your initials and the date that you wrote this, correct?
Well, that's the date that I started this sheet. I added more information on September of 2019, and then I added more information in February, which should have been, it says 19, but it should have been 2020.
Right. I'm only putting this up to show that this is the kind of material that you put in your reports, correct?
That goes in my case jacket, not in my report.
Fair enough. But it's part of the case file that's kept with the department even after you retire, correct?
That's correct.
And I know I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there's some discussion about locations. There's a mention that the top thing talks about a missing person. Did the name of the person make a difference to you in your work?
No,
The fact that there were homes, garages, Range Rovers, et cetera, did that matter to your work?
it mattered that things were collected from different scenes.
And so, for example, it talks about a Suburban being found at a park is the next line. Below that, garbage from Hartford. There's a mention of a Tacoma Toyota and the name of an employee, or at least the mention of an employee of Mr. Dulos. Do you see all that?
Yes,
Are these things that were told to you by law enforcement?
yes, or it was information in some of the paperwork associated with the evidence.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to look at 145 within my exhibit. Now, this is a list of some messages that you received. And again, there's many in this jacket, isn't there, in the whole file?
Yes, because I had questions as I went and examined evidence.
So it does mention, for example, that you spoke directly with a detective, Matthew Riley. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you documented all your communications with the law enforcement people, correct?
I would think I did. Now, if someone called
Pathic
me
will
and
save
said,
this.
"Where are you on this case?" And I just said, "Well, I'm still examining the evidence," I don't know if I would have documented that.
All right. But if it was important enough, maybe
Yes.
you were shared information or you provided information, you would document it, right?
Yes,
In fact, even if a defense lawyer like me were to call you, you would document that somewhere, right?
correct.
Now, there were a lot of items that were being submitted to you during the course of 2019 in this case, correct?
That's correct.
Were you under any kind of pressure to get it out faster than you would normally get it out in an average case?
Not faster, but that it should be your focus of your work. So if in the lab, you always have case assignments. So the director of the laboratory designated this as a level 2, which means that if you're assigned this case, then you put your other casework aside and you focus on
To
this
level
case
1,
So it's given a higher priority, I take it, than some of your other.
level 1.
by the director.
Well, I don't mean by the director, right?
Yes, the director of the laboratory.
And the number of items that you had to examine was larger than your average amount of items that you examined, correct?
Yes, I would say this, it's not the only big case that I ever did, but this is one of the bigger ones, yes.
So I want to ask you to just explain some of the terms that were mentioned during your testimony on direct examination. You talked about touch DNA a few times, right? There are different kinds of examinations that you perform when you're sending something out to the DNA people after you've had the file. Is that correct? After you've had the item that you're examining.
Yes, I'm not sure what you mean by after I've had it, or I'm collecting samples while I'm examining it.
But you're making some initial determination of whether it's going to be blood or touch evidence, correct?
Well, it depends on what I'm collecting, the reason I'm collecting that sample. Yes, so I touch or a reddish brown stain. Now, sometimes when I'm collecting touch, as I explained, example would be the zip ties, I did do some initial testing, which told me that there were some positive screening tests for blood, But because the thing itself was pretty well stained, I collected the whole thing and I just called it touch. But I also knew that within that sample, I had tested screening tests for blood.
Right. So let me ask you what I was going to get to that, but let's do it right now. The screening test is, as you said, was either Kastle-Meyer or an OT test. I can't remember what that one was called. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
And a screening test by definition is simply that it's screening out certain materials so that it might be evidence of blood, correct?
Correct.
But as a scientist, if you weren't finished, I didn't want to interrupt you.
As we report it, it indicates the presence of blood.
Okay. And indicate means that it's something that you would then either test for further or assume it's blood and move on from there, correct?
No,
You wouldn't be able to come into a court and testify that after a KM test that the item you tested did in fact contain human blood, could you?
I couldn't say that. If the test was positive, I can't even say for sure that it's blood, let alone human blood. That would require a confirmatory test.
Okay, and as I understand the testimony, there were only 3 times of all these items that you examined where you did a confirmatory test, correct?
That's correct.
Was that because there was I don't know, a money shortage or a time shortage? Is there a reason why you didn't do any other confirmatory tests?
Because I didn't want to consume any of the sample for that test, given that the fact that I was forwarding them to DNA and I knew the information that they could possibly get from DNA would be a lot more individualizing.
So as I understand your answer, if you tested with a confirmation test, so you would be able to say, yes, that was human blood using the I think it's the RSID or the hematrace test?
The hematrace, you can say, it indicates the presence of human blood. With the RSID test, you can say human blood is identified.
All right, and then you would have been able to say, yes, I found a particular stain was human blood, right? If it were tested positive using the RSID test, correct?
That's correct. Then I could confirm, that's why it's called a confirmatory test, that it's human blood.
If you had tested more of these samples, was it a concern that you might actually consume the entire sample by testing it, and then there would be nothing to send on to DNA?
My concern was that if I consumed some of it to do these tests, that I might be in some way having a negative effect on
Deleterious
the possible
effect.
DNA result.
Deleterious
let
is
me
the
ask-
word you're looking for.
I'm not sure I understand that answer, so let me see if I understand it. By having a negative effect, it means it makes the sample even smaller, which would make it more difficult for them to obtain a profile. Is that at least part of your
Yes.
concern?
They may be able to get a profile, but you don't know if it's a single source or a mixture. So maybe the interpretation would be affected by sending them less sample.
All right, and even back in the day when you worked in DNA, you had to do something called electrophoresis to kind of sort of tease out a DNA sample, correct? Isn't that something that even back when you were in the lab, in the DNA lab, you had to do?
Well, there's a lot of steps before that,
course.
and there's a lot of steps after that. But that's the part that the instrumentation works on to separate the amplified fragments of DNA.
All right, and again, I'm trying to make this simpler for everybody, but what you're saying is if there are possibly multiple sources mixed in a sample, whether it's skin or any other substance, it's harder to tell the difference if there's a smaller sample, isn't that?
No, that's not, I'm saying individuals, a mixture as in individuals, not a mixture as in where the DNA is coming from.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I meant mixture of how many people and who they are.
Yes, but you just said blood or skin or something.
Well, isn't it the same, whatever they're testing in the DNA, unless it's hair, they do it the same way?
Then I don't understand what you were talking about.
Right, maybe
When-
I don't either, so I'll move on, okay?
Well, I could say what I was trying to say, which
Okay.
was, if you have a mixture of people in a sample, which I don't know when I'm collecting or passing on a swab,
Sure.
if I use some of that for a test, which in my opinion gives less information than a DNA testing does, and I've diminished the amount that's going forward or reduced it, and that may affect the interpretation of a DNA profile that's a mixture of multiple people or just 2 people, then that is the reason why I'm not doing a test that would say, yes, it's human blood, or it indicates the presence of human blood.
And just so I can move on from that. So what are you saying that by testing it for a confirmatory test, you're diminishing the amount of whatever the item is, which makes it more difficult to make the determination of the number or the individuals in DNA. Is that a fair way to put it?
I'm saying that I don't know if it will, but I don't want to reduce the amount that's going forward because I don't know what that result is down the line. So a lot of these swabs, I just going by the color of them, grayish, brownish, reddish brown. So I'm going to forward them where they will get the most information out of those swabs.
All right. Let me ask you then some questions about the procedure. So you have something that you used and used at the time called a blood and touch evidence examination worksheet for each of the items, correct? That you tested.
Yes,
Okay, so we're not going to go into the 100 or whatever number we just went through, but I'm going to go through a few of them, and maybe you can explain the form to me as we go through it. Could you please pull up document 54, please? Do you see this document in front of you?
yes, I do.
Is this your handwriting?
Yes, it is.
So this is it begins with the laboratory case up at the top, am I right?
Yes,
There is there is some language, I'm not going to ask you about everything on this page, but this is a form that was developed by the Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection Division of Scientific Services, correct?
correct,
That was the department you worked for at the time, right?
correct. This was developed by the forensic biologist.
Someone before.
The
Wow.
supervisors in the forensic biologist unit developed this form.
And everyone who works in that division has to fill out this form when they're working on an item that's been given to them, correct?
Well, we have a lot of forms, depends on the situation.
Do you
Some
have to
people-
use this form if you're examining an item for either blood or skin cells or something along those lines?
Yes, this is the form that I would use.
All right, so if you look, your initials CMR are up in the right-hand corner there, that's correct?
That's correct.
And then there is right below your initials, there's a number 502I on this one, you see that?
Correct.
That was the number assigned by the state police to this particular item, correct?
That's correct.
Now, there's also under submission, there is a description. In this case, it says 53-bag with one standard white towel with blood-like stains. And you have that in quotations. Do you see that?
Yes.
It ends in quotations. I want to be clear. You did not give this description to this item, did you?
No,
This is the title that was given to this item by whichever investigative agency gathered it and submitted it to you, correct?
that's correct.
In order for you to remain consistent, you use their terminology, correct?
Yes, that's why it's in quotes.
Whether it's accurate or not, you just use their terminology.
Absolutely, I will.
So, for example, if they said that it was a ketchup-like stain, you would have written that, right?
Yes,
Okay. There's some discussion here, and the contents, this is below where it says this is your description of what you observe when you open up the package. Is that fair to say?
yes,
And then I'm going to just ask you now about the chart that we see here. So there is on the left a little number sign and then the number 53. You see that?
yes,
Now, 53, if we went through the stipulation, would be the number that the laboratory assigned to at least this sample from 502I. Is that a fair statement?
yes, that's true.
And then you talk about where something was either swabbed or examined, right? That's in this next column over.
The next column over shows collection location, so that would be the where.
Wait, okay. Now, what about the swabbing quantity? What does that mean?
That means if I, let's see. If I had swabbed that stain, then I would have put the number. If I was collecting for touch or something, so I was creating the swabs, that swab number would go under swabbing quantity.
All right. And if it says R/B, what does that mean?
Reddish brown,
Reddish brown. Okay. So these are your terminology, correct, on this?
that's right,
And the bottom ones, for example, says pinkish. You observed something that looked pink or pinkish, right?
correct.
And you indicated the collection location is, you've described that, so I'm not going to go into it here, but where on an item you either examined or took a swab or cut a piece, whatever you did, this is where it would be, correct?
Correct.
Now, let me ask you about the next column. It has KM/OT. You see that?
Correct.
We're talking about right here. This is where you did the screening test, right?
Correct.
And as you indicated, you did some of these KM tests yourself.
Yes,
Some of them were done by the police, but you would put that in quotes on the document KM plus or KM minus, right?
correct.
If you did it, the purpose here is, again, it's just a screening test to determine whether it needs some further exam, correct?
Correct.
If it is, like, if we look in the third one down, for example, this one, right? In that column, in that column, it says NT, you see that?
Correct.
And NC, and they're both circled. NT means not tested, correct?
Correct.
And what does NC mean?
Not collected.
So whatever that was observed in that one, nope, you did not collect it. You left it on the towel, or in this case, whatever this, yeah, on the towel itself, right?
That's correct.
And then there are other words. I just want it to be clear for the jury. If it says in that box, there's a POS, that would mean positive, correct?
Yes,
INC would be inconclusive,
correct,
and NEG would mean, I think, negative, right?
correct.
And then down below in the same box, there's an NA. That means not applicable.
That's correct.
And it would be not applicable if it was the kind of thing you couldn't collect off of whatever the item was. Is that a fair way to look at that term?
No, that would be for something that I collected for, say, touch and not applicable.
Oh, meaning, maybe you could explain that. If you were going to collect it for touch, we use terms like touch DNA. We're really talking about skin cells when you use that term, right?
Well, we're talking about any biological material that might be deposited there. Yes, when you touch somebody, something, you leave epithelial skin cells behind. So yes, that is one source of the biological material that's there.
Sure. And when you say some, you started to say somebody, it can also be transferred by touching a person too, right?
Yes,
Or a
if
thing.
somebody rubbed my shoulder here, then it may be possible to detect their DNA if I swap that.
Sure, but we're just using the word touch as a shorthand for transfer of the epidural cells, right?
Yes, or I like to use the general term biological material.
Fair enough. And you did indicate that KM does test positive for other, not just, you said human, animal blood, but for other kinds of even plants. Isn't that right?
Plant peroxidases will give a positive result. So because the heme and hemoglobin has a peroxidase-like activity, so therefore, like plant peroxidases would also give a positive result.
Okay, so let's go then over to the next column. This is the column where it would have indicated if you actually did a confirmatory test, right?
That's correct.
And if you did the confirmatory test, then you'd be able to say, if it in fact was human blood, you would check the box positive, right? The POS.
That's correct.
Or it would be negative. The choices were positive, negative, inconclusive, correct?
Correct.
And below that, it's IFT and NFT. The IFT stands for insufficient for testing, correct?
Correct.
And the NFT stands for what?
No further testing. That
Wait.
means by me, not that it couldn't go on to DNA.
Of course, but we're talking about your work, not
Yes,
someone else's.
yes, but I wanted to make that clear.
Of course. So I wanted to make it clear for the jury, you did no further testing on
Yes.
the items, and I'm just using a few of these as examples, right?
Yes,
And then if it was going to go on to DNA, there's a disposition, this box here, right?
yes.
And there's two columns. It's then given, you start with the 53 that's over on this side, right?
Correct.
And then you add sample 1, sample 2. That's what the S stands for in each of these, right?
It really stands for the S that was given to forensic biology, serology, but it's just like other sections might have a G or a T or something, but for forensic biology, we're using the S. So anybody who sees 53S1 knows that the
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, what happened? Uh-oh.
yes,
And again, do you use, is it just your regular eyesight, or do you use sometimes a magnifying glass or any kind of screen to enlarge something?
it's just my regular eyesight.
Right. And then occasionally, and I'm not even going to ask you this, there's occasionally you'll add notes at the bottom of something else that you did maybe at a later date, correct?
Yes,
Okay. So I'm going to then turn to the next, number 55, please. That's the next page 2 of 2, right? So I'm not going to go through it. This is still the same towel that we're talking about, right?
that's correct.
And it still says 53 up the top, correct?
Correct.
And 53 down the side here.
Yes,
And these would be additional places that you did an examination on that particular item, right?
yes, or observations.
Or observations that you made, correct?
Yes,
Am I right?
yes,
So for example, the last one down here, right? It doesn't show any kind of swabbing or anything collected, but you made a note in 1, 2, 3, the fourth box down here, correct?
correct.
And you indicated here, no touch type sample was collected due to overall skin
No, overall
stains and staining.
stains and staining, yes,
Right.
that's correct.
And that means that based on what you found, you just assume whatever that stain is, you've already sent it over or recommended it go to the DNA section, correct?
No,
All right. So why would you make that notation there?
because there's so much reddish brown stains and staining that to go around and try to avoid all those stains to collect a touch type stain is not possible.
Okay. So let's go to page 6, number 686, please. Now this had 3 separate numbers that were on one worksheet, correct?
Correct.
And were you aware that although this is shorthand, it says unstained area of steering wheel, blood-like staining of steering wheel, and 136 was interior side of left front door. You see that, right?
Yes, I could see the descriptions.
All right. And again, I'm only going to ask you about the one. This is the same form, different data that was entered, correct?
No, this is a swab only multiple submission worksheet.
And this is based on the fact that someone else submitted swabs to you, and you were examining those swabs that were presented to you, right?
That's correct.
The swabs come to you in a tube with a large Q-tip, like a COVID test type thing.
You want me-
They come
hold
in
on.
various ways. They come
Okay, fine. I'll act like Hassan. Suck my dick. Why don't you suck my dick? Blah, 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 blah. Turkish turk roach. Blah, 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 blah. Turk roach noises. Blah, 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 blah. Suck my dick. There. You got your Hassan. One more thing. Mom, give me the chicken tendies.
in what we call a swab carton, which is they're inside the submission packaging, or we call it a swab sleeve, which is like a paper sleeve, or very rarely they come in loose in the packaging. And sometimes they have, there's these kits that form a cardboard box around the swabs, and so they're drying inside this cardboard box. So those are the various ways that we get swabs inside the outer packaging.
So when you look at the individual, I'm only going to refer to the middle. Did I just change?
You changed the
Did the image
page.
get changed?
You did change the page.
Oh, I must have pressed. Can you put it on 86, please? That's better. Okay. So on 135 is the one in the middle. You see that here, right?
Yes.
It's described as a number 135, blood-like staining of steering wheel. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Now, without going back to my sheet, do you recall that this was, and from your notes, that this was a swab taken from the steering wheel of a 2017 Chevy Suburban in New Canaan, Connecticut?
I would have to look at my notes because there were swabs from so many different locations.
I'm well aware, so,
I could look at the, here. So that's 135.
yes.
From the packaging, it says it was collected from the Chevrolet Suburban. Yes.
Right, but just, since there's more than one in this case, do you just say where it was collected?
On the request, I think there was more information. Let's see. Belonging to victim,
Okay.
yes.
So if the alleged victim, right? That's who, someone else described it as victim, but we're talking about alleged.
I'm reading
Well,
the
before we
information on
proceed-
the request for,
The witness is reading from the document in front of her.
Okay,
She's not subject to the agreements between you and counsel for the state.
okay, fair enough. You're reading from a document that someone else prepared, right?
correct.
Okay, so I want to be clear, even though the title of this item, blood-like staining of steering wheel, you tested this using a screening OT for blood, did you not?
That's correct.
And your response, what was the finding using the screening?
It was negative.
So again, the fact that someone else calls it blood-like staining does not mean that there's blood once you actually even do a screening test, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And just if you go quickly to page 87. Again, this is also various, and I'm not going to go through each thing on this, but this is another page of your worksheet where these were swabs collected by others, correct?
Correct.
And submitted to you for review. Is that right?
For processing, yes.
For processing. So we have 137, 138, and 139, correct?
Correct.
And 137 was identified to you as a left front seat adjustment control, correct?
Yes.
And you did a reagent test or a screening test for blood on this swab, correct?
No,
No, they aren't
Can you tell us
endorsed.
why it's NA?
because it's not applicable because it's a touch sample.
Okay. And then rear view mirror, again, it was for a touch sample, not a screening test for blood, right?
Yes, I didn't do the test because it was a touch sample.
And the cargo area rear seat controls, again, you did a screen for touch, is that right?
No, we don't have a screening test for touch.
Oh, so you just create the sample to pass on to DNA? Is that what you do?
There is nothing that would, I'm not sure I understand your question, because these are all NAs. These 3 submissions are touch, and we don't have a test for touch in forensic biology. The test would be to go on to DNA to see what DNA, if any, is on those swabs.
So you don't even do a test to see if there's anything organic on the swabs?
That's correct.
Oh, so you just, when it says, for example, over on the right there, 139 S1, 138 S1, and 137 S1, you just pass these along after looking at them. Is that a fair statement?
Right, I have to cut the swabs off, put them in a tube, properly labeled. Then I have to itemize the swabs in our LIMS system, which is how we track our evidence. And then the tubes are then put into a plastic Ziploc type bag and heat sealed and initialed. And then I create a transfer sheet, which lists all the items that I'm sending over. And that is the information that will be eventually passed along to the DNA analyst.
Fair enough. I'm going to ask then that you look at 164. You were asked questions specifically about this item 97, which was identified as license plate and screws, or it says plate and screws, but you recall this was one of the license plates that you were shown and asked about, correct?
Yes,
It says the word touch is written on some of these. Sometimes it's not written, sometimes it is. Does that mean that you looked at it solely for purposes of touch and did not consider whether to look for any kind of presumptive screening test for blood, right?
yes, as you see there on the 4th row down, no blood-like stains noted on screws and washers. So therefore, all I was doing was collecting touch samples from the license plate and the screws.
And you did observe on 97-1 that there was rust-like deposits noted, correct?
Noted, right,
Okay. And again, we go over to the right side to DNA and you assign it an S number, correct?
correct.
Now, if you would turn to image 177, you were shown this for a little bit, and I'm going to ask you about this document. All right?
Okay.
You recall, now it's
Can I pull out my, look at my
absolutely,
worksheets?
absolutely.
Okay,
If this was noted, and there's a little square over on the side there, is this your handwriting right there?
you mean the paper that's
Yeah,
on
the
the
little with the
ruler?
number on it.
Yes,
So even though it's on the side, that indicates that this would be item 99, correct?
correct,
And then the image, as I understand it, when you were shown it, these are the various places where you took swabs.
correct,
And so we would go back to a worksheet similar to what I showed you earlier on, correct?
correct.
So if we can then go to 174, this includes, and it's going to be more than one page, there were a number, it's 174 and 175, just if you could just show the witness 175, please. So these 2 pages actually set forth what happened with each one of those swabs that you examined that are located in the photograph that we just looked at document 177, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I just want to be clear, if you go back to 174 for a minute. The first 4 of those swabs were negative for the screening test, correct?
That's correct.
The 5th and the 6th ones that are down here at the bottom, you said were positive, but there's some notes. Could you just explain what the notes say, because it's hard to read, please?
So it says positive and then it has a little week times 4, which means I swabbed the area with 4 swabs, and I took a few fibers off of the 4 swabs, combined them, and got a weak positive OTOL result. And I did that, so they were collected on 9/10, and I tested the now dry swabs on 9/11.
And these were also passed on to DNA, correct?
Yes,
The same thing for the final one on this page, same thing? Weak, is that what the W stands for? It's
yes, weak, and I just tested a few fibers from 1 swab.
If you go to the next page, the top one talks about a panel handle area. Do you see that? The top one?
Yes,
That was the location, and that we could go back and look at the image, but this would be S7, right?
correct,
We could tell that because over here at the end, that's where the 7 is.
correct,
So we look at that picture, we could look at this, we know which area, correct?
correct.
And there's both a positive and an NT in the same box. Do you see that on this
Correct.
right here?
Yeah.
Could you explain how it has both in the same box?
Because you can see positive 1X, so that means I just tested a small portion, just a few stained fibers from 1 swab, and then I didn't test any of the second swab.
But what does NT1X mean? You
The
only,
1X means the other swab, because there's 2 swabs, so one swab got tested and 1 swab didn't.
and then you made a comment in the next column over for that one and the next couple down. You said insufficient for testing. Do you see that?
Right,
Did you try to test for blood
no,
using a confirmatory test?
no,
It was insufficient because it was too small a sample?
because, yes, there wasn't not enough sample, and I had to switch to OTOL, which is the more sensitive test, and so insufficient is what I believe was the correct interpretation of what I collected.
Okay. Again, none of these items were subjected then on 99 to confirmatory testing to determine if in fact it was human blood or even blood.
That's
Right.
correct.
Okay. Let's go now to that. You were showing some pictures of a doorknob. Is that correct?
Yes,
I'm going to try and move faster here. If you could just put up document 366, please. This is just to refresh everyone's memory. This is a doorknob that was provided to you. It's not attached to a door, correct?
yes,
It was a doorknob with a plate and screws that was provided to you, correct?
these pictures are the knob without the screws. At the top, it says without screws.
Oh, I just missed that. Okay, but if we look at, I was more interested in down along the right-hand column over here.
Yes,
It says, would you just explain what it says?
so this photograph I took while the evidence was in the LP unit. When I got the evidence back on a later date, on 06/01/19, I tested that area with O-tolidine, and it was positive, and it was a reddish-brown staining with ridge-like detail. I don't call things that may look like a latent print or a patent print a print, because I'm not a latent print examiner, so I describe them as ridge-like detail.
Okay.
So that's what that is on the side there.
And since you're not in the part, you know that someone else did an examination and made some determination about what that ridge-like detail was, right?
The latent print examiner.
Yes. Okay. And you, again, here, it says here that you did a OT plus, correct?
Yes,
That's right?
correct.
And if you go to 365 now, this would be the worksheet of the results of your examination of that doorknob without the screws, correct?
Well, that also is the other doorknob also, the one with the screws. So 44-1 is the 2 knobs and the plate, so it's the whole submission.
Okay. In any event, there were no confirmatory tests done for human blood on any of the samples, either the front of the knob, the back of the knob, the plate, or the screws, correct?
Well, I only had one sample that was reddish brown,
Yeah.
and I did the OTOL testing on that one sample, which was positive, the one we just discussed, and it was insufficient for further testing. So the answer to that one sample that I took that was reddish brown and I did the screening test on is it was insufficient for further testing for the confirmatory test for human blood.
So you were unable to confirm that it was blood, right?
Yes, that's true. I didn't even do the test.
Because of how little it was?
Yes, how little it was.
Okay. And the next items, NT again means not tested, correct?
Correct.
And then the next 3, NA means, again, not applicable to the particular item. because they were touch?
Yes, it was ridge-like detail touch.
Okay. Could you go to 386, please? Do you remember examining an item that was identified as a metal scraper with broken blade?
Yes, I remember.
Okay, and you were shown this picture earlier today?
Yes,
You would go now to 385. This is the examination worksheet that you did on that item, the metal scraper, correct?
yes.
And I believe it indicated, would you note what you said about it in the second box down?
No blood-like stains noted on blade or tool or blade holder.
Now, if you look up at the top, you actually noted it looked like a rust-like appearance. Isn't that true if you look at the description?
Pazar
Yes.
milkers.
So you didn't see anything that you considered to be a blood-like stain, right?
That's correct.
Just out of curiosity, the word tool, is that, you're just describing that this is a tool? Is that what you mean by
Well,
that?
I divided this item submission up into two different areas. The part that holds the blade, razor blade, that kind of goldish part. So I call that the blade holder and the blade. And then the rest of this tool, I call the tool, to just distinguish those two areas. The part that maybe someone held a little more, and maybe this part, you don't know what that area was used for. So just to collect the samples from two different areas.
And that's why you called it tool.
Yes, to just distinguish the major part of the glass scraper, and then the end, which holds the blade and the partial blade that's sitting in it.
All right, so if we go to 394, please. This is 41-3 that was described as a garbage bag, and I'm just going to ask you, if you look at this worksheet, there were 4 entries on this worksheet, correct?
Yes,
You did not test any of these, even for a screening test of blood, correct? On this, I'll show you another page, but I'm saying on these samples, correct?
let's see. Can I have a moment?
Sure.
No, I did not.
Okay, now, can I have 395? This is listed as a panty liner. Do you see this?
Yes,
You did if you look at the first item, you did do a screening test using KM, Castlemine, correct?
correct.
But you noted that it was insufficient for further testing, right?
That's correct.
And then sent it on to DNA, right?
Yes,
And the other samples from the absorbent side and from the other side, et cetera, as you go down this list, you did not do any other testing, correct?
there was a small reddish brown, brownish stain, which I did not test.
Okay,
And then there was some pinkish stains, which I didn't test. And then on the absorbent side, there was also brownish faint stains, which I didn't test.
all right. So your answer is you didn't test any of the other items, right?
Other stains, yes.
Other stains. Okay, now let's turn to 408, please. There's been some extensive testimony about these, this garbage bag with the knot in the middle, correct?
Yes, I see that.
So
sorry,
you had characterized this, or you made it part of 41-3, because that's where the previous item came out of, the panty liner, right?
No, the panty liner was 41-3-1.
Okay.
So the panty liner came out of the garbage bag.
Oh, okay. So 41-3 was the garbage bag that the panty liner came out of, correct?
Correct.
So if we can now go to 461, please. Again, this is one of these blood and touch worksheets that we've gone over a bunch of times.
Correct.
This is the, this is now a zip tie exam that you did, correct?
Correct.
And for this one, you tested, again, you did the Castlemire screening test, right?
Correct.
Says you did, right?
Yes.
But it's also, you circled NC in the same box, is that correct?
Yes. And then I wrote next to it at this time.
Okay, which means at that time, you didn't test it a second time, right?
No, that means that I didn't collect it at that time.
Oh, okay. And then you checked in the next box, no further testing, is that right?
That's correct. And if you look below, the third row, 52-1, which is after they'd come back from latent prints, I swabbed the entire surface, including that reddish brown stain, where I have a note, see above.
So let's look at that for a second. You brought this up. You didn't check any of the boxes there, is that right?
Because I said see above.
Which means there was no difference from what you did before, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, which above are we referring to that you brought up on June 18th, 2019?
The first row where I did some testing, it was positive. I tested 2 areas of reddish brown staining and I didn't collect them because it was going to go to latent prints. And well, that's actually the reason was there was so much reddish brown staining on that item that I wanted to swab the entire surface to collect the reddish brown stains and touch after latent prints.
All right, there's other items. I'm going to skip a couple of them. I'll just put them up on the screen so the jury can see. There's a similar report, 462, that's in here for the zip ties, 52-2. The form is the same, so people can understand the terms that are in here the same as the other pages, correct?
Yes, they're the same form.
Okay, and then we'll go to 463. There is reference here to a, fiber-like item. Do you see that at the
Correct.
top? Is that what you were testifying before, that you don't know if it was hair or something else, but
Unless you
with
like
fiber-like, you gave it a biology number and it was sent on?
Yes, it was retained.
Okay. 464, please. Again, this is all from those garbage bags that are 52. You did the same thing with these items here, the same form?
No, this is not from a garbage bag. This was a separate submission, 52 with 4 zip ties in it.
So this is from the same zip ties, correct?
I'm sorry, you said it was from the garbage bag.
I misspoke. That's from the zip ties, correct?
This worksheet is 52-4, which is a zip tie.
And the previous page was also from the zip ties, correct?
Yes, 52-3.
All right. We go to 485, please. This is 88-1, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, I do have about maybe 10 more minutes. I'm wondering if this is a good place.
The
to
interesting
stop
thing
for
is
the
the
day.
lab tech's the only
It
one
is.
knows.
Losing
The
my voice.
prosecutor had
It
no
is.
idea what's going on.
We are going to have Mr. Roy back again tomorrow morning, correct?
Hold on here. Can you guys hear me better now? Better 1 or better 2? Is that better? My audio is low. I didn't fucking touch it this morning. Yes, it's better. Okay. So, you notice she caught that, hey, you're talking about the wrong exhibits, the wrong testing things. The prosecutor and the defense are like, yeah, it's all fucking DNA. You tested. She's like, actually, this is the right one and this is the right one. You're wrong. And that's what you require when it comes to these things.
May we approach, Judge?
Yes.
He's like, no, you may not approach.
In the session tomorrow at 10 o'clock. As usual, please avoid any media coverage and please do not discuss these matters with anyone at any time. Thank you for your patience and we plan to see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
All right, guys. So that is day 15. Let's day 16 here. Not a whole
All
lot
right.
of
This honorable Superior Court now stands adjourned until tomorrow. at
good
10 a.m.
stuff.
Please exit
So-
courtroom.
Let's move on to day 16 morning. Ooh, what's the forecast for Connecticut? Ooh, that's not good. Gonna be a cold day there. Yeah, she's allowed to have her phone. A lot of places let you get away with it.
Good morning again.
Good morning.
So we're doing our
She's
own
also the
AV
defendant. It's a little
information.
different
Yeah,
than
so
being in
yesterday
the
when we left off, I was about to ask you
gallery.
about 88-1, which was the garbage bag that was tied up. Is that correct?
It's noted.
Noted. Okay. But this is the item that you examined, correct?
Correct.
Now, I note that from your report that you did split some of the work from 88-1 between yourself and your colleague Anita Valonis, correct?
Anita. I need
Anita
Amanda hug and
Not
kiss.
do all the work. Anita did some of the work.
I need Amanda hug and kiss.
Did you undo the knot on this bag?
No, I didn't undo it.
Did someone else undo it? Did it arrive in this format as we see in this particular image, which is part of my defense exhibit R? Or was it number 408? Or was it in a different condition?
It was knotted. This is a photograph of how I received it.
Okay, so you don't know if anybody had already opened it up, turned it around, retied it, or anything like that
No, I don't.
before you got it?
That's correct.
Were you made aware that this was an item found in a garbage pail or receptacle with a large number of other items that were not inside it?
I was aware that it was collected from the garbage in Hartford on the Albany Avenue area. I was aware of that.
Okay. And you were aware that there were a number of items exposed in the receptacle in and around this bag when it was obtained, correct?
The black knot.
I'm aware that there were other items.
A big black
I don't know
knot.
what you mean by exposed.
As opposed
Big
to
and
being
black
inside that bag.
I just know that that bag came in submission 88.
All right, so you don't know the condition it was in and what it was found amongst when it was retrieved by the state police. Is that a fair
That's
statement?
correct.
Okay. And you indicated that one of the things you do in the lab is you have to be very careful. You wear gloves, you wear a smock or some kind of lab coat.
A schmuck.
Correct.
And is that
Oh,
part
a
of the reason
smock.
to make
Not
sure
a
you don't
Dr. Spock.
contaminate one item with another, right?
Well, that's the reason we are covered up is that we don't want to get any of our biological material on the evidence. And of course, we don't want to expose ourselves to any hazards that may be on the evidence.
Do you also switch gloves between each item you look
Oh,
at?
of course, and we switch gloves, at least I do often while examining something.
In other words, that's so that you don't contaminate an item or a portion of an item from something you had already just looked at, correct?
Correct. I mean, we clean the whole area. We clean all our utensils. Everything gets very well cleaned and disinfected with Clorox.
And you indicated, Clorox is a substance that will get rid of many of the biological materials you look at.
Well, by Clorox, I should have said bleach. Clorox is a brand of bleach. Yes, it's what we use to clean down all our working areas. Yes.
But my question was, do you use that because it eliminates a lot of the residual biological matter
Yes.
that might be on the
Yes,
counter
exactly.
or
Yes.
on your gloves or anywhere else, right?
Yes, we just discard in a biological hazard. We don't clean our gloves off. We just discard them.
You indicated also that one of your concerns is not putting some of your own biological excretion, if you will, for want of a better word, onto the items
Excretions?
you're getting,
Ew.
I be coughing on an item or sneezing on an item.
or even getting some of your skin cells on it, right?
Correct. I'm just the basic of not getting anything of my biological material onto a piece of evidence.
Ew.
Fair enough. And if you take off gloves, I assume you do it away from the item itself, right?
Yes, and I'm turning them inside out as I'm taking them off.
Is it,
Ooh.
from your training and experience, can some skin cells actually shed just by flipping the gloves off, the latex gloves, from that action alone?
Yes.
That I don't know.
Okay, but you, in any
You're
event, it's part
worried
of the
about it.
protocol to move away from the item, remove the gloves and make them inside out and throw them away, correct?
Well, I have a hazardous waste container that's not sitting right next to the item I'm examining. It's over there on the side of my lab bench. And I'm over there taking off the gloves. So yes, in general, I'm taking the gloves off, not on top of the item I'm examining. That's correct.
Okay. So I also understand that when going back to my question about Ms. Valonis, you acted as the technical reviewer of the work that she did on this item 88-1, correct?
I examined this 88-1.
No, my question is, you said you split the work in relation to items from 88-1. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, she examined some of the items in 88, in the submission 88. I believe
Milk
she
truck
examined
just arrived.
88-3, not 88-1.
Okay.
She examined 88-3, a knotted plastic bag. I also examined a knotted plastic bag, but that was 88-2.
Okay, so I'm just putting this up for a moment. This is again from my Exhibit R. I'm not going to ask you, we've been through this. This is, says page 184. It's my page 485 for these purposes, but this is the same form, the blood and touch
Just
evidence
go by.
examination worksheet that we talked about yesterday, correct?
Correct.
And again, if we look at the KM column and the KMOT, this is the screening column. It says NT for the first two, correct?
Correct.
Positive for KM on the 3rd and 5th, correct?
Correct.
And a weak one on the 6th, right?
Correct.
But if we go to the next column, there was no human blood confirmatory test done on those items, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you observe inside this bag a green and yellow sponge?
No.
Was there another black bag, garbage bag, that you saw and at least were the technical reviewer of that Ms. Falonis opened?
If I could explain something. So when the submission was originally opened, 88, there was a number of items within 88. So the latent print examiner itemized all those items that were found in 88. So, and then he individually wrapped those items and put a barcode, the laboratory barcode with the item number on it. And that was how we could, the work got distributed without us having to exchange the mother package submission and us each going in and out of that submission. So I did not see that sponge come out of the submission 88. Now, I did review, as a technical reviewer, Anita's report that she wrote up of the sponge. That's correct.
Okay, so
This is all
let
too
me just
tight.
break that down a bit. 88 was identified as whatever came in toto from that particular garbage receptacle from Albany Ave. Is that a fair statement?
I don't know that. I know that a number of items were placed into submission 88, but whether the garbage receptacle, that part I don't know.
Okay, let me ask this a different way then. You did not break it up into 88-1, 88-2, 88-3, or any other 88- other number, correct? Somebody else did that.
That's correct.
Did you, and the reason I'm asking this is, was there more than one green and yellow sponge recovered from item 88?
Looking at my notes here, I see that there was one sponge that was located in 88. I don't have any other notes that there was another sponge.
You do not have any other note about that?
Just that 88-1-1 was a sponge that was found in the non-damaged bag, which was the two bags which were taped together, which was referred to as 88-1. I could check something else that I have here.
The reason I'm asking this is, I want to make sure that we're not confusing two different items that may have been retrieved at the same time. That's why I'm asking.
I only have notes on that there was, within submission 88, there was one sponge, which was itemized as 88-1-1.
Okay, so you just indicated that it was an 88-1, not 88-2, correct?
It's 88-1-1.
Did you at least, you testified that you examined 88-1, correct?
Yes, but it was already removed
Oh, okay.
because Kevin, or the latent print examiner, Kevin Parisi, had taken
Kevin!
of 88, like I tried to explain earlier, itemized everything and packaged everything separately. So therefore, I didn't have to go get.
She gave me a separate
88,
package. Ooh,
88,
yeah.
88. I could just get the individually packaged and labeled.
She looks like a dirty lady.
88-1. And then when I wanted to examine
Like he gave me his
Yeah.
dirty package.
a
Mm.
piece of cardboard, which came from 88-3, it was already in a separate packaging with a label on it.
Okay, so I just want to show you, I know that maybe you haven't seen this picture. This is from State's Exhibit 42, folder it's
Oh.
cut off, but it
We
says
gotta check
3
to make sure
Albany
we're
in
at the right
green.
speed here.
And I'm just going to ask you,
Oh, yeah, we
are
are.
you able to tell us, you see there's a number 502 on a yellow sheet of paper here. Oh, no, you don't see that. Excuse me. All right, if you now could look at the screen, you see there's a number 502 next to what appears to be a green and yellow item next to the word green in this image. This is 7-275 in State's Exhibit 42. You see that?
I see a sponge on the screen, yes.
Did you yourself, and this is what, did you yourself ever examine that particular sponge that we see in this image here?
No, I never examined the sponge in this case.
Okay, and I want to be clear, do you know whether there were 2 sponges recovered at the same time or in the same trash receptacle?
I don't know.
Okay,
No, she didn't test them. She didn't care. Never came her way.
I just want to lose any of the exhibits, Your Honor.
You still me there? Hello, bitch lasagna.
You also testified yesterday that you did some testing on a swab or a cutting from a cover of a car seat. Is that correct?
I did examine a cutting from a car seat, yes.
Could you just tell the jury, what did you do with that?
Going to refer to my notes.
Of course.
The cutting floor. It died in your arms tonight.
So it was a cutting of
Damn,
black
this fucker's
upholstery
on
type
there.
fabric with a foam backing, and there was an area on the black side that was circled.
When you did this cutting, did you have the entire car seat there?
I did not do this cutting. This was what I received as the evidence, a cutting.
Did you have a picture of the seat that it had come from?
No,
You did have some communication, did you not, with a Detective Riley about which
Bitch
side
lasagna.
this
Bitch.
cutting came from?
Lasagna.
I might have, I don't recall. I'd have to find, if I could find that.
Would reviewing a email between, that you may have been
Yes.
involved in, assist you in
Yes,
refreshing your memory?
yes, it would.
All right, I'm just gonna have this marked for ID, please.
Bitch lasagna. Oh, bitch lasagna.
Can I approach your Honor?
Yes.
Showing you what has been marked as Exhibit F for identification, I'm just going to ask you to review this 2-page document, and I'll just note, you recognize your initials on there?
Actually, that's my coworker's
All right, you
initials.
recognize your name on there?
Yes.
Okay, so you just look at this, you can, it's just, take as much time as you need, and when you're done, let me know, and I'll ask you a question that refreshes your recollection.
Okay, thank you.
Does that refresh your recollection as to whether you were privy to any communication about the location of the seat being either left or the passenger or the driver's side?
Should I read what it says here?
No, I'm asking if it refreshes your recollection that you would receive that communication.
Oh, yes, this is an email that I received. Yes.
Okay, so I'll take that.
Okay.
Thank you. So having had your memory refreshed, do you recall that you were unable, that the police were unable to determine whether the seat cutting that you received was from the passenger or the driver's side?
That's correct.
You said it had a sponge rubber backing, correct?
A foam backing,
Foam backing, the soft foam? Is that what you meant by that?
like upholstery, that little thin layer of foam. Yes.
Okay. And upholstery foam is absorbent, isn't it?
As is cloth, yes.
There was no, you did not see any visible sign of any staining of any sort on it, correct?
On this entire piece, no.
There was none at all, right?
Not on either side.
So if somebody had identified it as a blood-like stain, you saw nothing to support that, correct?
Visually, no. With my unaided eye, no.
And you looked at both the front upholstery side, right?
Yes,
And the back side with the foam on it, right?
that's correct.
Just a moment. Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Redirect, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yesterday, you were asked on cross-examination about whether or not you performed confirmatory blood tests on a number of swabs. Do you recall that line of questioning?
Yes.
And I believe during your answer, you indicated that the information received from the DNA unit would be a lot more individualized.
Yes.
Could you just explain to the jury what you meant by that?
Well, if I did a confirmatory test for blood, it would either say human blood was present or that human blood was indicated. Now, if they did receive or obtain a DNA profile from that evidence, then there's, I'm sure, as you probably already heard from the DNA analyst, that there's genetic markers that are identified, and then they can be compared with the same tests that are run on a known sample of someone's swabbing of their cheek or their blood, and that you can compare those, and that's what I mean by individualizing.
In other words, if you had done a confirmatory blood test and it told you human blood is indicated, but DNA can actually give information about who may have contributed to a profile.
That's correct.
And so the more confirmatory tests that you do, the less DNA that there is to analyze. Is that
Objection
fair to say?
leading.
Well, this line of questioning was developed yesterday, and so it is not leading to the extent that the state is essentially testifying. It stems from that line of questioning concerning the amount of DNA and the interpretation of the sample once the DNA unit analyzes.
Yeah, that's
If I'm
fair.
giving them less sample, then potentially I'm reducing the amount of DNA that's in that sample that's going to DNA. And I don't know how that's going to affect their overall result or interpretation. That's why I
No,
say,
working on this.
Latent Prints does their examination before I do, because if I swapped over a latent print, maybe I would remove enough information where that latent print was no longer useful. So that's why we're aware of what other sections that we work with, how we want to best utilize the evidence available.
You mentioned on cross-examination that you use bleach to clean your bench area in between each item. Why use bleach?
Because it destroys biological material. We make up fresh 10% bleach every day, and we constantly are cleaning. I would say anybody interested in forensics, you better be prepared to clean. It's just part of the job. Clean your work area, clean what you're using, and just everything has to be maintained clean.
So if things are bleached or other cleaning products are applied, or car goes through car wash, for example, that could destroy potential biological material. Is that correct?
It depends on the type of cleaning agent that you're using.
Sure.
Bleach being the most prevalent one that is used in forensic labs to clean.
Thank you so much, Your Honor.
Yes.
Nothing further.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may. Have you ever heard of a car wash using bleach to clean tar?
I don't know anything about car washes.
Or what detergents or
No,
what kind of cloths they use?
that's not any part of my
Fair enough.
knowledge.
And in answer to a couple of the other questions about not wanting to, do you recall just saying that the reason you didn't do a lot of testing is you didn't want to maybe diminish or reduce the amount of any potential DNA that for the DNA section, correct?
That's correct.
But that's, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead. You can finish.
But that includes touch DNA, that is skin cells, right?
That's correct.
It includes, you mentioned even a fingerprint. It might diminish the amount of skin cells in a fingerprint ridge, correct?
What I was giving an example of was saying that if I swapped away part of a latent print, that would give a latent print examiner maybe less information to identify a latent print. I was just trying to make a kind of a comparison. That's why we try to work with the other units in order to maximize or utilize, get the most information that we can out of a piece of evidence. I wasn't talking about, I guess I did make myself clear then.
All right, but what I want to do to be clear though is when you're talking about wanting to reduce, to prevent the reduction of any potential DNA source, that didn't mean that all the items that you did not do a confirmatory test were blood, correct?
If I did a screening test, it just indicates the presence of blood. It doesn't determine that blood is there.
Let me see, it indicates the potential presence of blood, correct?
It indicates the presence of blood. That's what it indicates. We're not saying blood is there, but we're saying it gives a positive test.
Somebody wants to say hi.
And that's the way. It
Everybody.
indicates the presence of blood.
It's a
Why-
presumptive
what's
test,
that?
as you said yesterday, correct?
No, I said it was a screening test.
screening
We
test.
don't use the word presumptive in the lab.
All right. But you also testified that other things besides blood show a positive reaction to KM,
Just gonna
correct?
object at this point outside the scope.
Well, this line of questioning has not yet become circular, but the clarifications are fair, overruled.
Should I repeat my question?
Oh, yes, plant peroxidases also will give a positive result with the screening test for blood. That's because,
That's fine.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
all right,
I just didn't want to give let the jury have the false impression that just because there was a K&M screening for blood that was positive, that meant there was
Well,
blood
that's
in the
not a
sample.
question,
Object to the form of
Attorney
question.
Schoenhorn. Stating that I just want to give the jury an explanation is not a question.
I will rephrase the question. To be clear, you're not saying that just because there was a positive reaction to a KM screening test, that in fact sample contained human blood, correct?
well, definitely not saying that. It says, I'm saying that,
That's fine. You're not saying what I just said, correct?
right. It's
No, that's fine. No further questions.
You were asked on cross-examination just now about car washes using bleach. I wanted to ask you, could vacuuming a surface potentially remove biological evidence from that surface?
Your Honor, that's definitely outside the scope.
Well, now we're talking about what goes on at the car wash. Again, the term car wash doesn't open every door. Sustained.
I have nothing further, Judge.
Nothing else, sir.
Well, you may step down.
Thank you.
Your Honor, state calls needed onus.
Oh, this is what you did yesterday, correct? Yeah, no. Oh, that's the end.
Please raise your right hand.
Okay, guys, if you weren't aware, apparently shit goes down with this witness.
I'm sorry. I'll start over. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely?
Okay, I don't know who this lady is, but apparently shit goes down with her and Attorney Shorenhorn. So be ready. I don't know what, but even Law and Crime highlighted it. So I don't know how bad it is, but apparently it's bad. It was interesting enough. So yeah, let's go. Where's it? Gets goo. She gets the goo. Buenos. Oh yes, this case. Like seriously, I want. Just give me a fingerprint with her name on it, and I'm like, okay, I get it. She did it. Give me a fingerprint. Give me something. That's all I want. That's all I want. Let's just like tell me who did it and prove it. Like at this point, just a little bit, because this is not getting anywhere. God, you know, Lifetime will make the trial 100 times more interesting, though. But here we go.
The case may be that evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury.
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Anita Velonis, Anita
VAILONIS. Thank you.
As long as you may be seated.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Dulos, would you just indicate to the jury where you were working in 2019?
I was employed at the State of Connecticut Forensic Science Laboratory.
And have you since retired?
I have.
Oh my God, they're all
April
fucking
1st,
gone.
2022.
They all
What was
quit.
your position at the laboratory prior to retirement?
This is
I was
ridiculous,
practicing
man.
in the forensic biology unit.
And how many years did you work at the state laboratory?
I started first at the Department of Public Health, State of Connecticut. I worked there for 12 years, doing approximately what I'm doing now when I retired. From 1999 until my retirement, I worked at the State Forensic Lab in Meriden.
And what were your responsibilities at the state forensic lab?
In the forensic biology unit, I was tasked with examining evidence for the presence of blood and body fluid, as well as taking samples for touch or wearer DNA analysis. I also was able to be educated by the FBI laboratory, and I examined human hairs for the lab as well.
What type of educational and training background do you have in doing these things?
I have a bachelor's of science from St. Joseph College, which is now University of St. Joseph in West Hartford, Connecticut. I majored in biology chemistry with a bachelor's of science degree. I also have a master's of science from the University of New Haven. I have a concentration in criminalistics. I've also performed other continuing education courses throughout my career.
And do you have any specific training with respect to hair and fiber analysis?
Yes, the FBI, I was trained by the FBI. I spent 4 months at the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, where they trained me as their own. I learned how to examine hairs, identify hairs, determine what body area a hair came from, and also do microscopical hair comparisons.
And since you've retired, you're being compensated for your preparation and time here, is that correct?
Yes,
Now I want to direct your attention to laboratory case number 19-002984. Did you perform analysis under that case number?
I did.
And would it be fair to say that you split the responsibilities of the forensic biology unit with Ms. Christine Roy in this particular case?
Yes,
So in some instances, you analyzed certain evidence, and in other instances, she analyzed certain evidence. Is that fair to say?
yes.
And can you just tell us sort of your personal process or normal process when you receive a piece of evidence?
When I receive a piece of evidence, either through the evidence receiving unit, another person in the laboratory, or from a storage location in the laboratory, I proceed by documenting the packaging by photographing it. I would then garb myself appropriately, wearing a hairnet, a face mask, a lab coat, disposable paper sleeves, and gloves, which I change often. I lay down a piece of brown paper on the bench top that I've previously cleaned and start to examine the evidence. I open the bag, pour the evidence onto my paper. I photograph it as I examine it, and I look for the presence of any blood, in this case, or any hair-like fibers that I might come upon. I would package certain things separately, but for example, the hair-like fibers to be examined later on. And then I begin to test any reddish-brown stains that might appear on this item of evidence with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, and choose the appropriate samples that I believe should be sent to the DNA unit.
Just approaching with what has been marked for identification purposes as states 110. Ms. Dulos, is this your curriculum vitae?
Yes, it is.
Judge, I move it in.
No objection. State 110 admitted as full.
Do you have an exhibit number, please?
110.
Just returning that to the clerk. Your Honor, at this time I have what has been pre-marked for identification as Exhibit 111, which is a paper copy of thumbnail photographs, and 111A, which is a DVD with the name Anita Dulos on it. I move these in as full exhibits at this time.
Doing approximately.
Can I just compare it to my copy, please?
Maybe it's opportunity earlier, but the jury where you were working in 2000.
There are no closed captions. I am sorry in advance.
I had no objection.
That's 111 and 111A.
Yes, sir.
Admitted
Everyone
for-
knows the slop gloves. Why didn't they do that during the trial? I don't know.
To be able to proceed
And that's a
with the
very
evidence,
good
see
point.
the screen a little bit better.
Yes.
So, was the volume boosted or not? I can't tell.
If you need to refer to these at any point, they're available to you. Well, I know you brought your own notes, is that correct?
That's correct.
I hear those for identification. I don't know if I heard the.
Well, the mark board.
Wait, I can't boost. Is the volume boosted?
And phone submission number, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so that submission number does not necessarily match a police agency exhibit number, is that fair to say?
That's correct.
You, however, refer to things by the submission number at the lab, is that correct?
Yes,
And then subsequently, there could be sub-submissions under that number, is that fair to say also?
yes.
Your Honor, I'm just going
Sorry, guys. We're trying to. There we go.
Your Honor, I'm just going to publish a stipulation between the parties, States Exhibit 103, specifically paragraph 6.
And would you read it slowly, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
State Police Exhibit 502E, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one pair of black husky gloves contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission number 62. Ms. Velos, I'd like to talk to you now about submission number 62, permission to publish exhibit, Your Honor. And I'm just going to open the folder on this disk entitled State Police 502E Lab Submission Number 62. Firstly, what was submission number 62?
Submission number 62 consisted of a pair of black Husky brand gloves.
And what condition were they in when you saw them?
They were intact.
And did you do a visual examination of the gloves?
I did.
And did you notice anything on the gloves?
I did.
What did you notice?
I noticed reddish brown type staining on each of these gloves.
Were the gloves given different designations? In other words, was one glove given a submission number and another glove given a different submission number?
Yes.
And can you just explain to the jury which glove was given which submission number?
So this was submission number 62. And I designated the left glove as 62-1 and the right glove I designated as 62-2.
And I'm just going to display the first photograph in this folder, Lab 62 1S1. Ms. Velonis, can you see that on the screen in front of you?
I can.
And can you just tell the jury what we're looking at here?
We are looking at sub-item number 62-1, the left glove.
And can you just explain what, if any, action you took with respect to this particular glove?
Yes. The first thing I did was I collected wearer DNA from the interior of this glove. I took a sterile swab, applied some sterile water, purified water, and rubbed the inside palm area of this glove. I preserved that sample and I labeled that as sample number 62-1S2, wearer DNA.
And you're referring to it as wearer DNA. Does it have any other names?
It can also touch DNA. They're both fairly synonymous.
And specifically, I want to direct your attention now to 61S1. Was that a swabbing of the interior palm side?
It's actually 62-1S1. It's a little cramped on the
Oh, excuse
photograph. I apologize for that, but that is in fact a designation of where I took the sample of the swabbing of the left glove interior palm side.
And on the bottom of this photograph, there's an arrow with a notation. Is that the general area where you took the swabbing?
The arrow is designating the interior of the glove. Clearly, I can't point to the actual area, but it was meant to imply that I swabbed the interior of this glove on the palm side.
And so because you tested, or excuse me, because that swabbing was for wearer DNA, as you call it, you did not do any presumptive or screening blood tests or anything like that on that particular swab.
That's correct.
I want to direct your attention now to 62-1S2. Can you just indicate to the jury, this is photograph lab 62-1S2 and 62-1S3, just beginning with the top photograph, and I'll zoom a little bit. Can you just indicate for the jury what we're looking at in the photo on the left-hand side of the top half of the photograph?
Yes, the image on the top left of this document is a photograph of the back side of the glove, the Husky logo on the back side of the glove.
And did you notice anything on that particular logo?
Yes, I noticed some reddish brown staining.
And because you noticed reddish brown staining, did you take any action with respect to that area?
I did.
What did you do?
I tested a portion of that reddish brown staining with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood.
And then with respect to 62-1S3, and again, just to be clear, this is all still with the left glove, is that correct?
That's correct.
And
I'd
then-
also like to add a little bit more to that photograph, if
Sure.
I may. So the sample that I did collect, I labeled as 62-1S2. I erroneously labeled it on the photograph here as 61-1S2, but clearly it is 62-1S2. There is no sample in this case that is a 61-1S2.
And now directing your attention to the bottom of the photograph.
The bottom left image on this page documents two things. The Velcro closure, in my opinion, was very clean and very new looking. There was no trace material or hair-like fibers embedded in the Velcro closure. I also tested an area of this glove with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. That is designated as the red positive sign on this photo. The positive screening test for the presence of blood indicates the presence of blood. I did not collect a sample from that area. I just noted that there was also reddish brown staining in that area.
So with respect to 62-1S3, which was another swabbing that you took, what area was swabbed there?
That was the strap-like closure at the base or opening of the glove. I noted reddish brown staining on the smaller Husky logo on that strap, and with also the stitching on that strap, as well as the what I call the ribbing of that strap that allows it to bend easily. Reddish brown staining was noted in all of those areas. I tested portions of this reddish brown staining and obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood.
And just to be clear, you did screening tests for blood, is that correct?
That's correct.
You did not yourself do any confirmatory tests for blood, is that correct?
That's correct.
And were all of these swabbings that you took from item 62-1 submitted for DNA analysis?
They were. From the strap, I labeled that sample 62-1S3. Staining on left glove, areas on exterior wrist closure.
And I take it that the same process with the swabs in that you cut the swabs and put them in a tube and prepare them for the DNA analysis. Is that fair to say?
That's very fair to say.
Now, with respect to the right glove, or what you designated as 62-2, just going to pull up a photograph of that. Is this photograph entitled Lab 62-2S1 and 62-2S3 a photograph of that right glove?
I'm sorry, I might have confused the numbers. Could you say that again?
Sure. Well, this is a photograph of 62-2S1. So that would be the right glove. Is that correct?
This is a photograph of 62-2,
Right.
the right glove.
And did you do a visual inspection of the right glove as well?
I did.
And can you just indicate to the jury what, if anything, you noticed about this particular glove?
I did notice some reddish staining near the base of the small finger and ring finger. I tested that area with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, and I obtained a negative result. Therefore, that stain was not blood.
Similar to the left glove, did you do a swabbing of the interior of this glove?
I did.
And was that for touch DNA or wearer DNA?
Yes, it was.
And was that designated as 62-2S1?
62-2S1, that is correct.
And similar to the last item, you have a notation of that with an arrow indicating that you swabbed the interior of the glove. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
And since it's displayed in this photograph, I'm going to just jump ahead to 62-2S3. What was that a swabbing of?
Sample 62-2S3 was a swabbing of some of the stitching on the wrist closure. That area I tested with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood.
And is that area that you swabbed displayed in this particular photograph and outlined?
Yes, it is. It is outlined in red, the wrist closure, tip of the wrist closure stitching.
That's where the mouse is that correct?
That's correct.
And I want to direct your attention now to a swabbing 62-2S2. What was that a swabbing of?
I observed reddish brown staining on the back of this glove on the Husky logo, identically to the left glove. The reddish brown staining I tested with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood. I collected a sample from that logo area and designated it as 62-2S2.
And just to be clear, in this particular photograph, that is the lower right-hand portion of the photograph, which designates the area for the swabbing designated 62-2S2. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And is the reddish brown substance that you observed visible in this photograph?
Yes, and I circled it in red pen.
This area here.
Correct.
And you actually took one additional swabbing of the right glove. You did 4 swabbings of the right glove. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I did.
And so I want to talk to you now about what you designated as 62-2S4 as a swabbing. What was that of?
It was reddish brown staining on the right glove, the stitching on the wrist closure again, but the back side of the glove.
And I'm just going to zoom in if I could and direct your attention to the bottom portion, left-hand side of this photograph. Does this photograph display the area that you swabbed and designated as 62-2S4?
Yes,
And that's this area here, correct?
it's the area of the stitching, correct.
Just going to publish a stipulation to the jury, Your Honor. This is State's Exhibit 103, specifically paragraph 8. State Police Exhibit 502I, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one white standard textile towel with blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission number 53.
I'll work on that.
Did you perform any analysis on a sub-item of 53?
Yes.
What was that of?
I examined sub-item 53S3, which was designated as trace material from towel.
And just displaying the photograph entitled Lab 53S3-1. Can you just explain to the jury what we're looking at here?
You're looking at a series of photographs I took during my examination of a hair-like fiber that was enclosed in 53-3.
And who actually recovered this particular fiber?
Christine Roy.
Okay, and so she ended up retaining it and then you analyzed it later?
Yes.
Did you do any analysis of this particular fiber or hair to determine what exactly it was?
I did.
And what was it?
I determined that this hair-like fiber was in fact a human hair.
And you had mentioned that you have some training in this area. Can you just walk the jury briefly through the process for how you make a determination as to whether or not something is human origin?
Yes. When I obtain trace material, a packet from an item of evidence, it may contain anything that we designate as trace material. It could be a hair, a fiber, glass, soil, mineral matter. All of this is contained within the trace collection. I remove anything that I believe is hair-like, and I separate it out. I intend to examine that item microscopically. The questions I ask myself really are, is this a hair? Is this a human hair or an animal hair? If it's a human hair, does it have a root? And does this root have tissue-like material on the end, meaning a piece of follicle perhaps, that could be sent for nuclear DNA analysis? So in order for me to understand what I'm looking at, I microscopically examine each and every hair-like fiber. I place each hair-like fiber on a glass microscope slide, add a little bit of water, and put on a glass cover slip. I want to document the length of that hair-like fiber, the color it may be, and the texture. Is it curly, hairy, straight, or curly, wavy, straight? And then I proceed to perform a microscopical analysis. When it's on the glass microscope slide and I put it on a microscope with a light source that comes from below, the light is transmitted through the sample and I can see the interior of that hair-like fiber. And it's that morphology that I can observe that helps me determine whether or not it's a human hair or an animal hair. Again, I will set any animal hairs aside. When I then proceed to look at this human hair and ask myself, does it have that root? If it has a root, again, I photo document all along as I'm going. I photo document that root and ask myself, does that root have any type of follicular tissue-like material on it. If it does, I may choose to lop off that root with a sterile scalpel and put it into a sterile tube for nuclear DNA analysis. I also maintain the shaft of that human hair for potential mitochondrial DNA analysis down the road.
And so this particular hair you determined to be human in origin, and you ended up forwarding this to the DNA lab, is that correct?
I forwarded the root portion of this human hair to the nuclear DNA section.
This is State's Exhibit 104, Your Honor. Specifically, paragraph 9, State Police Exhibit 363, seized from the Toyota Tacoma by Detective Matthew Riley on August 27, 2019, and identified as one interior door panel from right door, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as Submission 99. Now, Ms. Valonis, you did not actually examine Submission 99 yourself. You examined trace material from Submission 99. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Christine Roy did the initial examination of 99.
Correct.
And she identified trace material that was either hair or fiber-like object and designated as 99S14. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. And I'm just going to display within the folder State Police Exhibit 363, Lab Submission 99S14, specifically a photo lab 99S14.1. Was this the item that Ms. Roy found?
This was one of the items in the trace collection that she found, yes.
And specifically, this was designated as 99S14. And did you go through the same process in that you did attempted to determine whether or not it was human in origin?
Correct.
And did you determine that it was?
I did.
And was that forwarded to DNA?
It was the root portion of that hair.
Reading from States 104, paragraph 10. State Police Exhibit 364, seized from the Toyota Tacoma by Detective Matthew Riley on August 27, 2019, and identified as carpeting cut from right floor, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as Submission 100. Did you examine Submission 100?
I did,
And would you recognize photographs of Submission 100?
yes.
I'm just going to begin by opening the folder entitled State Police Exhibit 364, Lab Submission 100. And I'm going to open the photograph Lab 100.1 top side. Can you just tell the jury what we're looking at here?
It is submission number 100, and it consists of two pieces of carpeting. The first larger piece of carpeting that is displayed on the bottom, I designated as sub-item 100-1 and named it a brownish portion of vehicle interior carpeting. On top of that lies a smaller mat, which I designated as 100-2 and named it one vehicle floor mat.
And now I'm going to display Lab 100.1 bottom side.
Yes, that is the bottom side of sub-item 100-1.
So you essentially took it, flipped it over, took a photograph of that side as well, correct?
Correct.
And specifically with respect to 100-1, the vehicle carpeting itself, did you take any swabbings of it?
I did.
And specifically, what areas did you swab?
This is an image of a part of the sub-item 100-1. It has the floor mat removed from it. I tested various areas of this carpeting. One of the areas that I tested gave me a positive result with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, indicating the presence of blood. And that area is shown on this photograph and designated as 100-1S1.
And so just so the record is clear, this photograph, there appears to be almost a grayish outline in a circular pattern near the upper portion of the photograph. Is this the area that you are referring to?
Yes, it is.
And so based on that result, did you send 100-1S1 to the DNA unit?
Yes, I did.
And you took a second swabbing of this as well, is that correct?
That's correct.
And is that also shown in this photograph?
It is.
The area that was swabbed? And is that in the upper left-hand portion of the photograph?
It is. It's closer to what appears to be a tear in the carpeting. I tested that area as well with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood and obtained a positive result. I collected a swabbing of that sample, designated it as 100-1S2, and forwarded that sample to the DNA unit.
And then with respect to the underside or the vehicle floor mat, rather, this is a photograph lab 100.2, and this is the item that you designated as lab submission 100-2, is that correct?
Correct.
And did you do any screening tests on this particular item?
I did.
And what were the results?
I swabbed the top side and the bottom side. I also actually sliced it open to expose the interior of this mat, tested both sides, the inside of this mat, and all of the testing that I performed was negative with a chemical screening test for blood. Therefore, blood was not identified on this item.
And so consequently, no swabbings were taken that were forwarded to DNA from this particular submission.
That's correct.
Okay, the time is now 11:16. Madam Clerk, we are going to stand in our morning recess.
So, I mean, so far, like, yeah, this is. You guys are ridiculous. I'm not dignifying half these questions. Just saying. Everybody's saying, are the parts to complete that design off-the-shelf parts? No. The Hitchhiker kit is a entirely 3D printed thing, except for like the barrel and the collapsing stock and the bolt. All of these parts, like the bolt tube assembly, the threaded barrel nut, and then like the barrel shroud, and then the muzzle extension. This is all 3D printed stuff, as is the trunnion. These are all 3D printed parts. So no, these are not part of that. This is all entirely 3D printed. So no, you're going to be able to make it yourself. Also, a Wonderful Galaxy said the farms raised $75K. I saw that. Will I cover the lawsuit? Fuck yes, I will. 100%. So, more Nothing Burger. Yep, with a side of nothingness. To test for her job, one must be able to identify all type 6 of cats she has at home. Guys are so mean.
what Mr. McGinnis is doing, but I'll note that I was given a very large, almost 600-page download from the lab, and I believe the witness has certain documents that were not in that. So I think he's either looking to download it for me, or at the lunch recess, I think they'll just make a color copy. It's like 4 or 5 pages, but it's something I would be asking about. I didn't know she had the actual images with her. Just letting the court know.
Thank you.
See, the attorneys are getting along here pretty good. This is still the amount of paperwork, though. Like, more reports they've been given and shit. Like, come on. Like, why is the state not ready? I'm a little disappointed. They've had years to get this one ready.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
Here we go, round 2.
Specifically, paragraph 2, State Police Exhibit 502A.
We're at 1.5
seized from
speed.
Hartford by
Holy shit.
Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one clear plastic bag with blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission number 50. Ms. Valonis, you did not work on submission 50, but you did examine trace material that was seized from submission 50. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm just going to open the folder, State Police Exhibit 502A, Lab Submission 50, and specifically the photograph entitled Lab 50S11. Can you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at here?
This document displays a series of images from submission 50S1. It is the hair-like fiber that I designated as hair-like fiber number 1.
And did you do an analysis to determine whether or not this was human in origin?
I did.
And what was your determination?
I determined that this was, in fact, a human hair with tissue-like material at the root portion.
And so was this, was the root portion of the hair submitted for DNA analysis?
It was.
And was that submitted as submission 50S1-1?
Yes.
Paragraph 3 of that same stipulation, Your Honor, states 103, State Police Exhibit 502B, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one clear plastic bag with blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 51. And Ms. Valonis, once again, you did not examine submission 51, but you did examine an item which was removed from submission 51. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And can you just describe the item for the jury?
The item that I received, item number 51S1, was trace material from poncho, as it was labeled within the laboratory.
And I'm just going to display in the folder State Police Exhibit 502B, Lab Submission 51, the photo entitled Lab 51S2. What's being displayed here?
I'd like to make a correction. I was looking at the wrong worksheets.
Oh.
This was 51S2, hard whitish material with reddish brown staining crust.
And did you take any action with respect to this item?
I did.
What did you do?
The first thing I did was remove any of the reddish brown material from this item of evidence. There was also a hair-like fiber attached to this item of evidence. And Christine Roy, who examined the mother item, asked me to just photograph it without the reddish brown staining for documentation purposes. Later on, I was tasked to prepare it to be outsourced to another laboratory, that's when I took off the hair-like fiber, the reddish-brown material.
And I'm displaying photograph lab 51S2. What is this?
Yes, that is how the trace evidence came into my possession. It was packaged within a white paper fold labeled 192984 51S2 CMR, which Christine Roy's initials. She placed that white paper fold into what we call a trace tin. The trace tins help protect any items of evidence that are within it. So that is how it came to me. The samples I collected from this evidence was actually, the hair-like fiber was actually determined to be a blue fiber. I did swab up the reddish-brown stainings, and at that point, I just collected and did not test. And there was also some reddish-brown debris within that paper fold. So each of these items I retained separately.
And so your analysis was that the hair-like fiber was simply a blue fiber? I
A
believe?
blue fiber.
I'm just going to read the stipulation, paragraph 4. State Police Exhibit 502C, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one yellow and green kitchen sponge with blood-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as Submission 54. Now, Submission 54, you analyzed yourself, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And would you recognize photos of that submission?
Yes.
I'm going to open up the folder entitled State Police Exhibit 502C, Lab Submission 54. And within that folder, a photograph entitled Lab 54. Could you just indicate what we're looking at in this photograph?
This document is two photographs of a, what we call it, I call it a scrubber sponge, yellow colored with a green scrubber area, both sides of the sponge.
And did you notice any reddish brown staining on this sponge?
I did.
And so did you take any action with respect to the reddish brown staining?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
I located a reddish brown stain along the short edge of this sponge. I tested that stain with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, which gave me a positive result, indicating the presence of blood. I collected that stain and labeled it 54S1, stain on sponge along short edge.
And I'm displaying now a photograph entitled Lab 54S1 and 54S2.
I saw bits and pieces of it.
Directing your
I was driving
attention
around.
to the upper right photograph. Is that the general area where you collected swabbing 54S1?
Yes, if you look at the left top photograph, you can see that I've labeled S1 with a line to the reddish brown stain. The top right photograph is a photograph of the sponge and the stain after I removed the stain.
And did you notice additional reddish brown staining on the sponge?
I did.
And did you swab that particular area as well?
Well, I collected another reddish brown stain close to the short edge of that sponge. I obtained a positive result with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, indicating the presence of blood. I collected that stain and labeled it 54S2 and named it stain on sponge near short edge.
Yeah, and perhaps I stand corrected. You actually submitted the material itself for DNA analysis. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay. And so it's not, you didn't swab it. You actually cut a piece of the sponge and put that in the tube for DNA analysis. Is that right?
That's correct.
So I just want to direct your attention now to the bottom left-hand photograph. Is that the area where you removed 54S2 where your scissors are pointing here?
Yes,
Okay. And then to the right, at the end of the arrow depicted in the photograph, is that what you removed from the sponge and designated as S2?
yes,
And then you took one additional swabbing of this sponge, is that correct?
yes.
I'm going to display a photograph, Lab 54S3. And directing your attention specifically to the bottom of this photograph. Can you just tell the jury what we're looking at here?
We are looking at, two photographs are on this page. The bottom photograph shows the side, one of the sides, the long side, one of the long sides of this sponge.
And is the area that you designated as swabbing 3 depicted in this particular photograph?
Yes, however, the swabbing 54S3 was not only the edge, long side of this sponge, it was also the top side of the yellow portion of the sponge. So all of the yellow sponge area, avoiding the reddish brown stains, was collected and labeled as 54S3.
And so I'm now displaying Lab 54 again. This shows the entirety of the yellow area. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you avoided the areas which you had previously collected for additional testing. Is that right?
And any additional reddish brown staining I might have noticed, yes.
And were all of those swabbings submitted for DNA analysis?
Yes, it was.
And I'm saying swabbings, but again, there were 2 cuttings as part of that group.
Yes.
Just going to publish the stipulation, paragraph 5. State Police Exhibit 502D, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as 1 black rubber and fabric glove with dirt-like substance contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 61. Ms. Valonis, did you work on submission number 61?
I did.
And I'm just going to open the folder entitled State Police Exhibit 502D, Lab Submission 61. And I'm going to display the photograph entitled Lab 61S1 through 61S3. Ms. Valonis, can you just indicate for the jury what we're looking at here?
This is a black light-duty gardening type glove as I described it. It has fabric on the back and a sort of rubber-like palm and finger area.
And I want to direct your attention specifically to submission 61S1, swabbing interior palm side wearer DNA. What particular area did you swab?
I swabbed the interior rubber side, the palm side of this glove. The swabs that we use have 6-inch sticks, so the swabs are very long. So we're able to reach into the glove area and collect a sample for wearer DNA.
Does that also include the fingers?
Yes, it does.
And I don't think I asked you that for the Husky gloves. Were you also examining the finger areas of the gloves on those?
Yes,
And again, this was for wearer DNA, meaning that you did not test this particular area for blood. Is that correct?
that's correct.
You took additional swabbing, specifically 61S2. Could you just indicate what that was?
61S2 was an area a sample from an area from the cuff edge on the palm side of the glove. As you can see in this photograph, there is some soiling on this glove, but there is less soiling in that area along the edge. So I proceeded to test that area with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood. And I chose to swab up that area and label it 61S2 and forwarded that to the DNA unit.
And the area that you designated as 61S2, that is outlined here in the photograph in red, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, there appears to be, for lack of a better term, 2 red boxes on the bottom of the glove. 61S2 would be the bottom red box, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And now with respect to 61S3, we see that is the area designated above 61S2, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what type of swabbing did you do for that?
I also tested that area with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, and I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood. Therefore, I took an additional swabbing and labeled that 61S3 for DNA analysis.
And now I'm going to display the photograph, lab 61S4 and 61S5. Beginning with the top photograph, could you just indicate to the jury 61S4 was a swabbing of the interior palm side, is that correct?
That's correct. I took 2 additional swabbings. The top image indicates that I took an additional swabbing from the palm side, interior of the glove. I wanted to take a better, more complete sample, so I turned that glove inside out and swabbed the palm side for DNA analysis.
And then with respect to 61S5, which is denoted in the bottom photograph here.
Yes, 61S5 was simply a swabbing of the interior back of the hand, interior back of the hand for DNA analysis.
So no screening test done on that, is that correct?
That is correct.
I'm going to publish paragraph 9, State's Exhibit 103. State Police Exhibit 502J, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as 1 red and black bent broom/mop handle with blood-like substance on the black handle contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission 55. Ms. Valonis, did you work on submission number 55?
Yes, I examined that item of evidence.
I'm just going to pull up a photograph in the folder State Police Exhibit 502J, lab submission 55, lab 55, paren RBL stain. Ms. Valonis, I'm going to zoom in. Can you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at here?
That is the end of this mop/broom handle. I call that the black cap end. And on the black area, I noted some reddish brown stains, one of which was located on the cap. When I examined this, I just simply photographed it at this point and did not do any testing at this time.
And why didn't you do any testing?
This was also requested to be examined by the latent print area. So I didn't want to disturb that particular stain at that time. I noted where it was, and I continued my examination.
And did you eventually receive submission 55 back?
Yes,
And when you received it back, was it in a different condition?
it was.
How did it appear?
It was covered with latent print examination, dust or powder. So it had a different appearance altogether.
I'm just going to pull up a photograph entitled Lab 55S2 through 55S4. Ms. Velonis, I'm going to ask that you look at this photograph. Is this a photograph, or I suppose it's 3 separate photographs, but do these images show the broom or the, the mop as you received it back?
Yes,
Okay, and I believe you can see the dust in these particular photographs from the fingerprint analysis that wasn't present earlier.
correct.
Now, did you take any swabbings of reddish brown deposits from this particular item?
I did.
And is the area that was swabbed displayed in one of these photographs?
Yes.
Okay, would you just indicate which one?
The top left photograph displays the interior broken end of this mop handle. Within that interior area, I noted reddish brown deposits. I tested a portion of that reddish brown deposit with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood and obtained a positive result. So I collected a portion of those deposits as 55S2 and forwarded that sample to the DNA area.
And in the bottom left-hand photograph, 55S3.
55S3 was the stain that we previously viewed. Now it's covered with the fingerprint powder, but I did collect that stain, tested it, a portion of that stain, with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, and I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood. So I collected that stain as 55S3 and forwarded it to the DNA area.
And the bottom right image, 55S4.
The bottom right image depicts the exterior of the broken end of this mop hand or broom type handle. There was a staining, reddish brown staining on the exterior. I tested a portion of that staining with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood and obtained a positive result, therefore indicating the presence of blood. I collected that stain and labeled it 55S4 and forwarded it to the DNA area.
Now I'm going to display a photograph in that same folder entitled Lab 55S5. And actually, this photograph displays 9 separate images. I'm going to direct your attention to the image in the middle on the right-hand side in the middle row. Just indicate to the jury what we're looking at.
We're looking at the entire item of evidence, which was a broom / mop handle, which, as you can see, was bent in 2 places. I collected a swabbing for touch DNA analysis from the entire red barrel of this handle and labeled it 55S5.
And no screening test done on this. It was just forwarded to DNA. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm going to publish paragraph 10. State Police Exhibit 502K, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as 4 pieces of black plastic garbage bag with black duct tape attached to 2 pieces contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as Submission 88. Now, you used a phrase earlier, and if I could borrow it, you did not work on the mother exhibit of Submission 88, is that correct? Or at least with respect to 88-1?
That's correct.
But there were items found by Mr. Parisi in fingerprint analysis that you subsequently analyzed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm going to open the folder entitled State Police Exhibit 502K Lab Submission 88. There's a subfolder entitled 88-1. Specifically, what item did you analyze from 88-1?
I examined an item of evidence labeled 88-1-1, and it was named green/yellow sponge located inside untorn bag.
And just to be clear, this was a different sponge than the sponge we discussed earlier, which was a different lab submission entirely. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm going to open the photo entitled Lab 88.1.1S1. Is this submission number 88-1-1?
Yes, it is.
And did you take any action with respect to this?
I did.
What did you do?
I examined this looking for any reddish-brown stains on this sponge, and I did not observe any reddish-brown staining on this sponge. There was a darkish stain on this sponge, which I tested with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, and it was negative. I did collect a swabbing of this sponge for touch DNA analysis, and I labeled that swabbing as 88-1-1S1 swabbing of, and named it swabbing of sponge all sides.
And did you collect any trace evidence from this sponge?
I did. I located a hair-like fiber within the green side of the sponge and retained it as 88-1-1S2 for further analysis.
And I'm now displaying the photograph entitled 88.1.1S2. And I'm going to ask if I could just direct your attention to the bottom photograph or bottom image. Does that image show the hair-like fiber that you collected?
Yes,
thought that was
the
a
hair-like
bug
fiber
that
is there,
achieved
and also a
up top,
portion
smudge.
of other trace materials.
So if we could just draw a distinction between the two, is the other trace materials in the center top of the particular image?
Yes, it is.
And so the hair-like fiber that you collected is to the left side of the image and underneath that. Is that correct?
Yes, it's above the 1 to 1.5 centimeter of the ruler.
And this was also similar to the hairs that you discussed earlier. Did you analyze this particular hair-like fiber to determine whether or not it was of human origin?
Yes, I did.
And what was your conclusion?
I determined that it was indeed a human hair, and it had a root with tissue-like material on the root.
And did you go through the same process in terms of putting it under a microscope and things like that nature?
Yes, I examined it microscopically, photographed it as per protocol, and took my sample, meaning I took the root portion of the hair from the shaft and forwarded that to DNA.
And within submission 88, there was also a submission designated as 88-3. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what was submission 88-3?
88-3 was designated as a torn black plastic bag with knot and black tape. I believe the latent print unit designated it as one torn black plastic bag tied in a knot on one side, black tape attached to the bag, RB stains on bag.
And what does RB stand for?
Reddish brown.
And I'm going to open the folder, the subfolder 88-3. You had mentioned that latent prints analyzed this particular bag. Did they have an opportunity to analyze this bag before or after you did?
Both.
Okay.
They opened it up and they observed the reddish brown stains. I believe they didn't want to do anything to those stains. So they packaged it back up and sent it to me for examination. So I knew I had to return that item of evidence to them eventually.
And did you take any, well, firstly, I'll just display the photograph entitled Lab 88.3 Paren Interior. Can you just indicate what we're looking at here?
That is the black plastic bag interior. And I have two areas designated. The top left says duct tape B, and it points to a portion of black duct tape. I know it's difficult to see in this photograph. The lower right-hand markings that I've applied to this photograph says duct tape A, and it also has a line drawn to a separate portion of duct tape attached to this bag.
And just to be clear here, this is an image of the interior of the bag, meaning that you sort of, well, how did you show us the interior of the bag? Did you pull it out, or what did that look like?
Well, it came to me in a certain fashion, and as received, there was an exterior and an interior. So this is the interior of the bag as I received it. So I took the bag and turned it inside out to photograph the duct tape.
I'm going to show a photo Lab 88.3. Does this image depict the exterior of the bag as you received it?
It does. The bag opening is on the bottom of this image, so you might have to think upside down at this point, but the bottom is at the top and the top is at the bottom.
All right, so just to be clear, I have the benefit of the mouse here. This is actually here, the opening of the bag. Is that correct, what I'm circling?
That's correct.
And then this would be the bottom of the bag?
Correct.
Now, was this eventually submitted back to Leighton Prince?
After I performed some analysis, yes.
Okay, and that's what I wanted to talk to you about, the analysis that you did. You took some swabbings of this particular item, is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm going to display the photograph, Lab 88.3 S1 and 88.3 S5. Prior to giving it back to Leighton Prince so that they could do their analysis, how many swabbings of this particular bag did you take?
I took 4 swabbings.
So I'm showing you an image, and I want to just direct your attention to the top image here, if I could. I see a designation S1 with a blue circle around a particular area of the bag. Can you just tell the jury what that is?
Yes. This bag was received with a knot in it, and I proceeded to loosen that knot a bit so that I could swab the knot area and as well as the internal surfaces of that knot. During that time, I observed a hair-like fiber that was entangled in this knot. So I removed that hair-like fiber. So the swabbing that I took from the interior of the knot, I labeled 88-3 S1 and named it swabbing of bag knot area. The hair-like fiber that I removed, I ultimately labeled as 88-3 S5 hair-like fiber, which I abbreviated as HLF, from knot area.
And did you do an analysis of that hair-like fiber to determine whether or not it was human in origin?
Yes, I did.
And did you go through the same process that we've already discussed?
Yes.
And what was your determination?
I determined that it was in fact a human hair with a root, and there was tissue-like material on the root end of that hair. I removed that root end and forwarded that root to DNA. I designated that root area as 88-3S5.
And now I'm displaying a photograph, lab 88 3S2 and 88 3S3. And so this particular image, once again, has the bag upside down, if you will. Is that fair to say?
Yes,
And so the opening of the bag is at the bottom and the bottom of the bag is at the top here. Is that correct?
that's correct.
All right, I want to direct your attention now to the S2 and S3, beginning with S2. Can you just indicate for the jury what that designates?
S2 was a reddish-brown stained area, which I tested with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood and obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood. I swabbed that reddish-brown staining onto swabs and called it 88-3S2, and that's what you see. It says S2, it's sideways, and KM positive, which is our chemical screening test.
Was that swabbing submitted for DNA analysis?
Yes, it was.
And how about S3?
S3, again, was a reddish-brown stained area, which I tested with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood. I swabbed up that staining, designating it as 88-3S3, and forwarded it to the DNA area.
And now I'm showing you a photograph, lab 88 3S4. What does this show?
These are two images of the two different duct tapes on the interior of the bag. The duct tapes were situated in such a way that they were folded over with a slight exposure of the sticky side. And I wanted to collect a sample from the sticky side of those pieces of duct tape. So both pieces of duct tape, I swabbed the exposed white sticky side for DNA analysis, and I designated that collection as 88-3S4.
And so no screening test for blood was done on that particular swabbing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, after you completed the 4 swabbings that we've just discussed on this particular item, was it given back to Latent Fingerprints for them to do their own analysis?
I did take one more sample. I labeled it 88-3S6, and those were a trace collection, hair-like fibers and other trace materials from the bag interior. So I collected those, labeled those, and set those aside. But after I collected the trace, I did forward this bag to the latent print unit.
Incidentally, you had mentioned that some of the areas that you swabbed had a red or a brown color, is that correct?
Yes, reddish brown staining.
Not visible in the photographs. How were you able to view them?
It was difficult because it is a black surface, but I saw some reddish brown staining, and I knew that I had to collect that sample prior to going to latent prints. I didn't want to lose it after they process it, maybe with their dust or however they process it. So it was my intention to make sure that I collected that staining before it might be more difficult to find it after their process.
And you eventually got the item 88.3 back from latent prints, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm just going to display the photograph, lab 88.3 post LP. Excuse me, Your Honor. Can you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at here?
This is a photograph of the bag after it had been processed by the latent print unit. As you can see, it's in a different form right now. The knot has been unknotted per se, and I received it back in 2 separate portions. The main portion of the bag, and above that main portion of bag was a smaller portion of black plastic.
And so I want to just direct the jury's attention so we're clear. This is now the top of the bag where the mouse is scrolling back and forth. Is that correct?
Yes, the top is on the top side, correct.
And this portion here, which appears to be a oval or circular portion of plastic bag, you indicated that this was detached from the rest of the bag?
Yes, it is.
And so after this, did you perform any additional swabbing when you received it back in this condition?
Yes, I did.
I'm just going to pull up the photo, Lab 88 3S7. And can you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at here?
Those are 2 separate images of the exterior of the bag, one side of the bag, and I flipped it over and photographed the other side of the bag, both being the exterior of the bag.
And is the area that you swabbed and designated as swabbing number 7 displayed here?
It is.
And I'm just going to direct your attention now to the left-hand side of the plastic bag in the top image, which appears to be near the opening. There appears to be a blue outline. Is that the area that you swabbed?
Yes, I designated on that image the approximate area that I swabbed on the exterior of this bag for touch DNA analysis.
And similarly, the bottom?
Yes, correct. I swabbed the exterior opening of the bag for DNA analysis.
And now I'm going to show you a photograph, Lab 88 3S7 paren 2. What does this show?
That shows the separate portion of the black plastic bag as I received it from the latent print unit.
And did you swab this as well?
Yes. I swabbed both sides of that black portion of plastic bag as S7 as well. May I take a moment to review my notes?
Certainly.
So I want to be clear that S7 was a swabbing of both sides of this piece of black plastic bag, as well as the opening, interior and exterior of the bag, collected all together as one swabbing and designated as S7.
And that included this area here, the detached portion of the bag. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you swabbed both sides of this as well?
yes.
Ms. Dulos, do you have gloves?
I do.
Okay. Ms. Dulos, I'm approaching with what has been already entered into evidence as State's Trial Exhibit number 53, specifically a bag labeled Submission 88-003. I'm just going to ask if you wouldn't mind just looking at the contents of that bag and telling me what it is.
It is the black plastic bag and piece of plastic bag that I examined labeled 88-3
Judge, would it be all right to witness step down briefly?
with the item of evidence?
Yes, yes, ma'am. And I'm gonna ask, would you mind just, and I can take this, would you mind just fanning out the bag and just indicate to the jury, and I can help if you need.
If I ask counsel to stand back just a little so I don't have to stand over by the table, so I can't see what's going on.
Oh, okay. Is this all right, Rachel?
Yes.
So this is indeed the black plastic bag that I examined. As you can see, the area that I tested and collected, the reddish brown stains labeled S2 and S3 are marked on this bag with a silver marker. My initials are also within those circles. The swabbing that I took, that I designated as S7, was approximately the edge of the black plastic bag, interior and exterior, as well as the black portion of the bag.
So this top area here, the interior and exterior, would have been swabbing 7, is that correct?
Yes,
Along with the separate piece?
yes. Well, imagine that the bag was knotted and someone may have been handling this bag, as I imagined as I examined my evidence, that perhaps the bag was knotted and someone would be touching or carrying this bag. And that was my thought process in collecting that sample.
Yes.
I just have a moment, Ron. I have nothing further, Judge.
Thank you.
May I just return the exhibits to?
Yes.
Guys, I'm sorry. I thought it was set at 1.5 speed, but apparently you have to like set it back to normal, then ramp it up to 1.5. I wasn't thinking, so my bad. So here we go.
Yes. So a lot of questions I asked your colleague, Ms. Roy, was here yesterday, correct?
She was here yesterday.
You saw her yesterday,
Yes,
and you saw me talking to her and you yesterday, right?
yes,
Okay. So I want to clarify just a few items. You talked about doing screening tests for blood, correct?
correct.
And you used mostly, was it the Kastle-Meyer for that?
Yes,
You said a number of times that it is a screen for the indication of the presence of blood, and then you said it concluded that it indicated the presence of blood. You remember saying that?
I said it's a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. If it's a positive result, it indicates the presence of blood.
Didn't you mean to say it indicates the possible presence of human blood?
The word indicates means possible.
Okay, that was what I wanted to clarify with you, possible blood. And that's why you would, that might be one reason you would send an item on to DNA to have it confirmed, correct?
Correct.
Did you do any, withdrawn? There are confirming blood tests, correct?
There are.
And the lab has them, right?
Yes, they do.
There is a way for you to use a confirmatory blood test to actually be able to say, yes, this was human blood, correct?
Yes,
You were very careful to keep, and I think your testimony made clear, each item separately, correct?
yes,
Anything that you examined, you didn't have 3 or 4 of them strewn about on the table at the same time,
correct,
or even near each other at the same time, correct?
correct.
And you use gloves when you touch items, correct?
Yes,
Not just here in court, but in the lab, right?
yes,
You want to make sure there's no cross-contamination, right?
correct.
And before you got the item, you don't even know who was touching those items, do you?
No, I do not.
You also don't know whether there was any cross-contamination of any of the items that were part of what you referred to as 88-1, correct?
I received items as evidence as I received them. I know nothing about how they were processed or handled prior to that.
Okay, well, interestingly, I'm going to show you what has been previously filed in this case. It's, let's see if I find the exact. It's from Exhibit 42, Folder 4, Item 7. I'm just going to show you an image, and I just want to make sure this is not how you would examine. This is not how you would examine or store the items. It takes about, I guess, 10 seconds for this to, if you look at that screen. This is not how you would store the items that you are examining, is it?
Well, I just object, Your Honor. I mean, it's vague and
Well, the question is, would you store items as they would appear in a trash can on a city street? The answer is obvious.
Yeah, but
Is it
it's an obvious answer, but what would the answer be?
Clearly, I would not store evidence in a trash can on a city street.
Now, you don't know the items that you looked at. Were you even aware it came out of a trash receptacle on Albany Avenue at the corner of Green and Albany?
Yes,
But nobody ever showed you this image, did they? 4-272.
I've never seen this image before.
Is it fair to say that if this is how the items were in the receptacle, there might be some cross-contamination of the items as they were presented to you?
Yes, but I also need to mention that crime scenes are not forensic laboratories.
Exactly, right. You are doing the science, right?
Yes,
You are taking the items individually, correct?
I take them in as they are packaged by the submitting agency.
You do not take into consideration whether they might have been mixed up or even dumped together in another item, and so they would be easily transported before they came to you, correct?
I trust the submitting agency to perform their duties as they are trained, and I take in the evidence as it is presented to me.
All right, so you would trust them to handle it correctly, is what you're saying, right?
Yes,
So dumping everything from that barrel into one larger construction bag and bringing it someplace else, would that not be within the protocol as you understand it?
I don't see any alternative. Would you like them to spread out paper and go through this garbage can item by item on a city street?
Well,
I
yeah.
think I would personally also bag that, take it back to a secure location and sort through it.
Oh,
But
shit.
by
Here we
doing
go.
that, you also agree that it would cross-contaminate any items that were in that barrel, correct?
It's a barrel of garbage.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. We're going to slow this down. We're going to slow this down. Yeah. Wow. We got to go back a hair because that was some Karening. So here we go. We'll go back a couple minutes.
Submitting agency.
You do not take into consideration whether they might have been mixed up or even dumped together in another item, and so they would be easily transported before they came to you, correct?
I trust the submitting agency to perform their duties as they are trained, and I take in the evidence as it is presented to me.
All right, so you would trust them to handle it correctly, is what you're saying, right?
Yes,
So dumping everything from that barrel into one larger construction bag and bringing it someplace else, would that not be within the protocol as you understand it?
I don't see any alternative. Would you like them to spread out
Here we go.
paper and go through this garbage can item by item on a city street?
Well, you
I
have-
think I would personally also bag that, take it back to a secure location and sort through it.
But by doing that, you also agree that it would cross-contaminate any items that were in that barrel, correct?
It's a barrel of garbage.
That's actually not a good answer because then you're saying, so it's all garbage. So you're admitting it's all junk in what you find. So you're testing garbage, or are you testing actual things you think might have value? Like, be careful, lady, getting all your like. Let's go back to that. Let's watch her.
Correct?
It's a barrel of garbage.
Ooh, chicken head in it.
I just want to ask you about lab exhibit 81-1-1S1, which was a sponge yellow and with a yellow side and a green side. You testified about that, correct?
Yes, please let me retrieve
course.
my notes. 80.
Oh, now she's getting all
88
upset.
dash-
Aw.
88-1-1S1.
Ashley, thank you.
I'm sorry, what was that?
88-1-1S2 or 88-1-1.
Oh, hold on. You may be, no, 88-1-1.
Yes,
You have a document on that,
I do.
correct? When you were shown a different set of hair-like fiber, this was the yellow and green sponge that you, one of the two yellow-green sponges that you testified about, correct?
Yes, it was labeled green yellow sponge located inside untorn bag.
When you say the untorn bag, it's one of the two black bags that were part of 88-1, correct? Garbage bag.
I'm assuming so from the numbering, but I've not seen those other bags.
So when you obtained that item, the green, yellow sponge that we saw those pictures right at the end there, correct? At the end of your testimony on direct, I mean, correct?
Yes,
And I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same one, so I'm going to. Takes about 10 seconds for the machine to boot up. There it is. This is the item that you identified. This is from the state's exhibit, and it says lab 88-1.1S1, correct?
yes, 88-1-1S1, swabbing of all sides.
And this item appears to be what I would call like a pot scrubber type of kitchen sponge.
I call it a household or kitchen type sponge.
But one side is an abrasive, the bluish green side is abrasive, right?
That's correct.
And the other side is a yellow, more absorbent side, right?
That's correct.
And it's like any of these, I can't think of a brand name, but the ones where, you can wash, the abrasive side you can use to remove maybe dirt or food items, and then you can use the other side for a more smoother finish, for want of a better way to describe it.
Yes,
You looked at both sides of this item, correct?
I looked at all sides of this item, correct.
And then you noted, well, first of all, was this item, the way it's labeled, was this inside the black garbage bag that you were talking about before on direct?
I received it individually packaged.
Did you discuss this with any of your fellow forensic colleagues as to how it became individually packaged?
I don't recall any conversation.
Did you have notes as to whether or not the latent print examiner removed this from the interior of the garbage bag?
Well, I would just object to the form of the question. There's multiple garbage bags here, and he's specifically asking about the one we just saw in court, which is 88-3, which is a different bag.
Then I will rephrase the question. My apology. So you're aware that you didn't see 88-3 in the courtroom, but you discussed 88-1, didn't you?
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
In your testimony, didn't you discuss 88-1, the garbage bag?
Judge, I'm just going to object. It mischaracterizes the testimony. We discussed 88-1-1, not 88-1.
The court understands the designations as 80, whatever 80 we're using, -1, dash
So
something.
it's like
Oh,
1
okay.
degree off.
Let's just get this
Like
clear.
where-
You described there were 2 black garbage bags that were brought to the lab and designated as 88-1. Is that correct?
Like a separation.
I don't believe I did.
You were asked to examine this sponge, correct?
Mm.
Yes.
Where did it come from?
88-1-1.
Which is what?
Green yellow sponge located inside untorn bag.
Okay. Did you observe the untorn bag that it was removed from?
No,
Do you know who removed it from the bag?
I could look it up. Off the top of my head, it may have been the latent print examiner
Okay, so we're back to,
or Christine Roy. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
all right, one of them. It was done in the lab though, correct?
I'm assuming so.
So then I'm going to show you, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here.
These are thieves.
The item that you're referring to as the hair-like fiber or the fiber is this
Yes,
this
Jennifer
curved
Dulos
item
guy.
that we see in the bottom image, is that correct?
Yes,
And since this is also on the same photograph, the
Yeah,
top
she's not
image is the
liking that.
bag it was presented to you in, is that right?
that's the back side of the bag.
Right, and whose initials are that on the tape here?
I believe those are Kevin Parisi's.
And who again is Kevin Parisi?
He is the latent print examiner.
So does that then help indicate where this came from?
Yes,
Okay, and you opened it up, correct?
yes,
And then you examined this curved fiber item here, correct?
yes, it's a hair-like fiber.
And even though it's curved, it's about a half a centimeter in its curved shape from one point to the other end, correct? According to this image.
I documented it as approximately 0.7 centimeters in length,
Can you hear me
Is that
better now?
flattened or did you actually measure the curve?
flattened.
Okay. So if this was a crescent, if the we're just talking about the circumference, not the circumference, the diameter as a arc, it was about 1/2 centimeter, correct?
0.4,
And if you flatten it out, it's about 0.7, right?
correct.
Now, said you did some microscopic analysis of this particular hair, is that right?
Yes,
And I understand you have some images with you that were not shown to the jury yet, is that correct, regarding this hair?
correct.
And can I see that report that you have there, please? And we'll make a copy, but I don't want it to, I don't want to stop the question, because I only have a couple more questions about it. Is that it?
These are the images.
And I take it these are from the lab, correct?
Yes, I took those images at the laboratory.
Right, and then this is just your set, but it's from the original documents that the lab keeps, right?
Yes,
All right, so I'm going to mark this for ID with an understanding that I am only going to, we could replace this copy so the witness can have this back, but I'd like to mark these 2 images.
I have no objection.
But I would maybe, I don't know if we should not actually put the label on these, so we'll make a copy after the break.
They belong to the witness, so we should not label them.
Okay, but what could I just have just take,
You can use a sticky just to.
I'll use a paper clip with the ID on it for now. And for the record, this is going to be T and U, and I'm going to need some assistance just to turn on the Elmo because. Here's the power on. Can't tell. Do I have to press that? Because it looks like it's on. Oh, it's on. Okay. So for the record, use this more in grade school, Your Honor.
Probably. I can't settle on it.
It's like film strips.
Yup, and no body still.
That should be it.
Still no body.
Press something else.
Can you guys hear me better? Or can you not hear me over the stuff?
But this, we'll call T, and the next one will be U. How's that? So we're looking at 4 images on Exhibit T, correct?
yes,
You took these 4 pictures, right?
yes.
And again, the hair we see somewhat enlarged in this image here, correct?
In the upper left image, yes.
Upper left, well, the way,
Well, as it's displayed on the screen.
yeah, I realize. So, all right. So as it's displayed on the screen, this is the real size of it.
Correct. That's taken, let's say, with the naked eye.
And this image, which is on the screen, which is I'll just identify it since it's turned, I don't know how to fix that, but there's some language written around this enlarged version. Would you just describe, first of all, what does this say?
There is a square that I drew on this image. This square is encompassing the root portion of the hair that I removed. So the square, and there's a line that leads to some writing. The writing says 88-1-1S2-1 with an asterisk, and it says 2 DNA. So that is the human hair, the root portion of the human hair with tissue-like material that I collected from the sponge, and I sent that to DNA. The other writing on that image says remaining shaft 88-1-1S2-1 RAL, which means retained at lab.
And that's your handwriting, correct?
Yes, it is.
And then the other 2 images, there is a blue square at the edge of the, what looks like the fiber here, is that correct?
The human hair, yes.
So you did by now determine it was a human hair, correct?
I did.
Okay. And then if we go over to this image here, is this a microscopic enlargement of the hair itself?
Yes, it's a low power microscope that I use to capture these images.
And this is the shaft part that you testified about?
In that image, there's a bracket, and the bracket has a number labeled 88-1-1S2-1 asterisk. Now the bracket and the line leads to the other photograph. So I am depicting a magnified image of the same hair root in those 2 images.
Right. So in other words, this blue line here looks like it maybe has an arrow at the end. This is what you're referring to, right? This blue line that goes between those 2 images?
Yes, it's the same hair, the same human hair with tissue-like material at the root at different magnifications.
Okay. So now we're going to go to Exhibit U, which we're not going to put on your copy. It will be replaced with a color photocopy. So there are 3 images on you, correct?
Yes.
And would you just read what it says in the image? And I realize it's sideways, so I can either turn it. It's sort of counterintuitive, but all right. First of all, what does this image here, the one on the left top, indicate to you? What is it showing us?
It is a picture of the human hair after I removed the root with the tissue-like material. It is labeled on the photograph, root portion previously removed, with an arrow pointing to the end of that human hair.
And then this image to the right, what is this showing us?
The image to the right shows the tip of that human hair.
And what about this lower image here on the left here? What does that show us?
Lower left depicts the mid portion of the shaft of that human hair. These photographs are taken, the root end, the tip, the mid portion, for clearly photo documentation and review of the evidence by other examiners to review my work and testify that my work is accurate and complete.
In fact, everything you do has to be reviewed by another technical person, correct?
That's correct.
To make sure that what your conclusions are, what you wrote, there are no mistakes or typos or anything like that.
That I haven't gone rogue and gone off the SOPs, that I'm doing things according to the SOPs.
And just tell them what SOP means.
Standard operating
All right.
procedures.
And there are written procedures and training you go through in order to follow a certain procedure, right?
Correct.
And finally, could you just read what it says here at there's your handwriting below where it says 881-1S2-1. Just read what it says for the record, please.
After root portion removed, all photos 100x objective.
And 100x, is that 100 times enlarged?
Not necessarily.
Tell us what that means then.
The microscopes that we use for this image is basically your standard microscope that you might have used in high school, where you have the oculars that you look through, you see through a tube, and there are lenses at the bottom that you can rotate, sometimes smaller, less magnification to higher magnification. So I used the objective that was labeled 100x. Because I take a photograph, I'm not only going through the lenses of the microscope, but I'm also going through the lens of the camera. So I can't say that that's a true 100 times magnification of the object because of the lenses. And the camera that we use has a zoom feature. So we don't really know exactly how many times magnified that thing is.
In any event, this is magnified larger than the 0.4 centimeters of the original size, correct?
Correct.
And you sent this over to DNA for examination, correct?
I sent the root portion of this hair to DNA for examination.
And these are going to be my last couple of questions, so just bear with me for a moment. You talked a little bit about, you mentioned mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA in your direct examination, right? And you're not the DNA person on this case, correct?
That's correct.
That would have been, as far as you know, Kristen Medell, correct?
Correct.
But there is a difference between mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA, correct?
Correct.
When you're examining, well, mitochondrial DNA is from the mother side of the family or the maternal lineage, correct?
Yes.
And so therefore there would only be X chromosomes in it, right?
Yes.
But if, whether it's from a man or a woman, you'd still only get the X chromosome from mitochondrial
Well, I
DNA.
take that back. I don't want to go down that route because I think I misspoke. Mitochondrial DNA does not have X and Y chromosomes. So I would like to withdraw my answer and leave that to the DNA analyst.
All right, but in any event, you do know that mitochondrial DNA is from the mother side of the family, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you know enough about biology to know that the mother side of the family doesn't have a Y chromosome, correct?
In nuclear DNA.
In any DNA, right? There's no Y chromosome.
No objection.
All right, I'll withdraw the question. I don't have any other questions.
Nothing further, Judge.
Dulos, you may step down.
Thank you.
Well, that was it, the fight? Like, Law and Order made it sound like there was a massive fight. He just got her goat a little bit. She didn't like answering questions. I don't get the deal. That was weird.
May I have a moment with counsel for a moment? Your Honor, by agreement, the state is going to make a color copy of exhibits T and U, defense exhibits T and U, which I guess are admitted as full. I didn't hear if we were agreeing to
Oh,
that.
there was no offer yet.
Well, they were displayed to the jury, Your Honor. I don't have an objection. Obviously, it was her work.
Thank you.
So offer is full.
Defenses T and U admitted as full.
But by agreement, for the benefit of the witness, the state's going to make a color copy, and the copies will be the exhibits rather than the witnesses, so she can have this back.
Thank you.
And I will leave it with the clerk, or should I give it to the state with the court's permission?
Well, probably just give it to the state. Are there any other witnesses the state intends to call?
Not today, Judge.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of your day.
How many more can you
We
intend to
plan
call
to
at this
reconvene
point, guys?
on Monday at 10 o'clock. Please have a safe weekend. Please do not discuss the case. Please follow no media
Seriously.
about the case. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah, Law and Order, I guess, was desperate for clicks. That was awful. Sorry, guys, that was awful. I thought we were going to get somewhere to like, oh, somebody actually did something today. But nope. We're still left with like the inclusivity of it all. I'm at a loss. I really am at a loss. I don't know how much more the state can prove. Like, it's pretty clear that he killed his wife. Why everybody thinks that's not true? Now, did Michelle help? I don't think so. At least it hasn't been proven to me. So I don't know. Well, guys, that is it for. Oh, damn! I'm muted. Oh, all right, guys. So here's the deal. That didn't help anybody with anything. I thought we'd get something out of that long crime. Really oversold that. A little disappointed. So, yeah. So maybe we'll find something at some point from somebody somewhere. But for right now, yeah, let's see what Mr. Medicare is doing. Let's check let's check the homepage. Oh yeah.
Of course. Wow. Somebody gonna be famous. Real famous.
Writing to you now with my exceptionally long.
So yeah, I don't know. I just don't get it.
and warmly into my vagina.
You know, we know he did it. I don't know. Like, it's just, does she do it?
Tony Hunter 77
So
has joined the game.
Call 911. Place needs to be swatted. It's obnoxious.
You have a bully cabal.
So
You don't find people being bullied into suicide on 4chan.
I mean, this is ridiculous.
Okay, if he says any more bad words, I'm gonna hang up on him. He doesn't own Kiwi Farm, and he died last night. A little kid named Moon owns Kiwi Farm.
yeah, we'll find out though. Maybe this week. Yeah, I'm sorry. I lied. Chat cried. I know. My bad.
Sorry, I'm a soy-filled bitch and like videos.
Hey, long crime made it sound like it was getting good. They oversold it.
Just a tweet out. I mean, you know, just a tweet that mentions the hashtag gaming. It doesn't necessarily matter how you feel. Man, the blue check marks are going to shit their fucking pants.
It's 2019. I can't believe anybody believes me. I'm a spinning fucking ball of water.
True. I bet you when Jim finds out, he's gonna just give me so much shit.
One never knows when the homosexual is about.
I've had over 1,000 rejections in real life, 2,000 rejections online, so that's 3,000 rejections total. I aim as low as possible. I aim for obese women, ugly women, ideally ugly and obese. I would do anything just for a 300-pound ugly white girl.
I said it's not even hot.
You are not allowed to bring it to the hospital. No, you get no permission to fucking do it.
You gotta be kidding. It's just this declaration, right, of male dominance.
Put that in your pipe.
I definitely cheated on Super Mario with Sonic the Hedgehog.
Stop doing this stuff.
He's like the blue seductress who takes me out into the night and does wonderful things to me.
Enough! Stop!
How can a Yorkshire Terrier live in the wild? It's in plain sight, but you just don't see it. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's that time of year. I hope you're all ready. It's a Lonely Fucks Valentine's stream, and in celebration, and I'm here to teach you all. I've come to give you the gifts and the gears to land the ladies. All the secrets of the sectors are going to be revealed today. I hope you're ready. We have a master in how to woo women who's going to walk us through step by step how to make sure the ladies can't ever escape your grasp. It's all in the wrist. It's kind of like shooting a basketball. It's really how you flick that wrist. The wrist. That's the secret behind it. You got to get a good slap going. So she knows who's in charge. Oh, how have you been, chat? How have you been? I hope you're excited. This is going to be a very fun stream. Everybody loves when you stream about domestic violence. It's just the truth. And it's going to be that kind of stream. It's an in celebration. And who better to kick off our in celebration than the words of a martyr, a man who died for what he believed. I'm talking about, I'm hearing creaking. Maybe a spirit's haunting my house. I don't know. No offense, Coach. Please have mercy on me. Please have mercy on me. Now, we've got the words of wisdom from the dating master himself, one of the dating masters. He's dead now. He died in prison. But I wanted to share it with you. Okay? Here's tip number 1. Get your notebooks out if you want to land a lady. Get the notebook out. Get ready. Here we go.
Women are like dogs. Now, what do I mean? You have to treat them like you would treat a dog. You ever go up to a dog and you're afraid of the dog and the dog senses it, and the dog gets up and smells the fear coming off of you and starts barking at you and snarling at you and showing its teeth, and it's pissed off at you and doesn't like you. And you're like all insecure and tentative, like, I'm sorry, hi, can I get you a drink? I just want to be friends. Please don't bite me. And what's that woman going to do? She's going to snarl at you. She's going to look at you like, ew, creepy, yeah, rough. If you're firm and self-confident, they respond. They get relaxed, see? Just like dogs. You go up to a dog, a big, mean Doberman Pinscher, right? Or whatever, some Germanic, Rottweiler, right? Or a pit bull, You go up to that dog,
Coach Red Pill.
and he's like, hey, don't fuck with me, dog. So that's what you have to do. You have to treat women like dogs.
They're just like dogs. Don't you understand? Women are dogs. Yeah. Oh, Coach. Gone before our time. It's truly stripped away from us well before you could give us the gifts that would help us land a lady. But luckily we have somebody else to do that. Now, if you're not aware, a lot of shenanigans have been taking place. Enough shenanigans to get me to come back and
we're gonna
do
go
a very dedicated dating stream.
We're gonna go
Back in
watch
the day
this over on
Streamy, I did
Locals.
one about incels. Now I'm doing another one because this dude is definitely.
Guys, we're gonna go watch this over on Locals. So we'll start a stream up over there, okay? I'll see you guys over there in a second.
Definitely a fucking incel based upon his behavior. Oh, it's going to be fun. Lots of mirth in store for what's coming up, but I wouldn't be a hat salesman if I